protection for your folks.
We want to welcome everyone to Centerville City Council being held here on July 2nd. We welcome those that are in attendance by in person or by Zoom. We welcome staff that's here. We welcome City Council that's here. It's a fun and unique week when we celebrate our independence and the freedoms that we have in this country. And that's one thing that's allowing us to do this here tonight. So let's start by doing a roll call starting at the end with Councilwoman Meekum.
Meekum present.
Summer Hayes present.
Heyman present.
Hurst present.
Plummer present.
All five present. Thank you for being here, council members. Thank you for your dedication and devotion, and staff for all you did in preparing for this meeting as well too. Let's start with the legislative prayer thought by Councilwoman Gina Hurst.
Okay. In light of the fact that this is, that we're celebrating our Day of Independence this week, I wanted to read a little bit of poetry by Amanda Gorman. If you don't remember who she is, she read a poem that she wrote at the last inauguration of the president, and I was very impressed with her. She's a very young woman who has a really great perspective about being unified as a country. So if you're all right, I'll just read a couple of paragraphs because it's really long, so I won't do the whole thing. The dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country in a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge a union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. One thing is certain, if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the golden hills of the West. We will rise from the windswept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation. In every corner called our country, our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When the day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light if we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. And I love that in that she talks about action. Like, it's not just enough to say it. We have to act on that. And I feel privileged and honored to work with a council and a mayor and staff members that do exactly that all the time. So thank you very much for the willingness that all of you do to serve our community. And with that, I will say a prayer. Our dear kind Father in heaven, we are so grateful for the opportunity that we have this week to celebrate our freedoms in this country. We're grateful for the freedoms that we have, freedoms of religion, freedom to do the things that we want to do. We're so grateful for our staff and council members. Please bless and watch over them this week. Please be with our police department as they prepare for the festivities that we'll be celebrating, that they will be able to be protected and safe, and that they'll be able to help keep our community safe. We are so grateful for all that we have been given, and we ask Thee to bless us that we will continue to have Thy guidance as we make decisions that impact this community. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Chief, do you want to come up here? I would like you to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Could you do that?
Absolutely. Please rise and face the flag on the west side. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Chief. All right. great week. And we've got a great chief, and we celebrate the birth of our nation. It's a great week. So thank you, Councilwoman. Now it's the open session. This is a chance for anybody that's here present or is on the computer to be able to share what might be on their minds. We ask you to keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. So that's now available. Seeing no comments, and thank you, Councilwoman Summerhays, for taking the open session 2 weeks ago. I didn't have quite as long tonight, so
I
thank
will
you.
just say that I've been mentored well by you and Shaylin, having served on the planning commission when she did the Hive. So I credit good mentors.
Thank you. So, all right, we will move on. Let's, we do have a public hearing matter first on our agenda. This is the fine schedule amendments. Lisa, you want to talk to us about these fine schedules?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Today, we're bringing forward to you some fine schedule amendments to our comprehensive fine schedule for municipal code violations. And just wanted to thank, this has sort of been a group effort. It was initiated by Tammy Niss from our Justice Court because she brought to our attention that some of these like parking and traffic violations should be infractions, and also that there were some violations of our municipal code that the police officers wanted to cite, but we can't issue a citation if it's not in the SMOT list. So it actually has to be on here, which means we have to amend our fee schedule. So we did a little bit more comprehensive than just that. I thought since we were looking at these, let's just make sure that we have a lot of code options for the officers to issue citations throughout our code. Some of these are just to make sure that each chapter has at least one code violation, like animal control or public safety or, public parks and public health. And so we created this list with these amendments, and then also had a small committee with the chief and the chief select sat in on that, and the Justice Court Judge Miller also reviewed some of these and gave some additional suggestions to reduce mainly the non-moving violation traffic code back down to an infraction. So we have a significant number of amendments with some proposed suggested fines. So the suggested fine is the minimum that the judge can issue. And so we use some factors that we kind of talked about in the staff report that basically, we want these to be sort of a financial sanction as well as a deterrent effect on these, but we also took into consideration, the danger to others. So for instance, sexually oriented businesses and tobacco products and beer, those are all a $500 fine, which is on the high end. And then we have more medium violations, which would be business code violations, and then lesser, like animal control. And even some of the ones like fireworks and things on the hillside that could start a fire, those are the $500 fines. Anything that might be very costly. So for instance, driving over asphalt that would be really costly to repair. So those are on the higher end. The lower end, some of these are 100 for noise and other things. So we also, I know Tammy had looked at what some of the other cities were doing on these violations, but we're hoping to have the council adopt these amendments, but to come back, we decided to do it in a two-step process because we would like to come back to you with a larger analysis of the way that the surcharges work. If you issue a Class B misdemeanor, there's a 90% surcharge on the fine that goes to the state and other entities. If you issue a Class C misdemeanor, it's only a 35% surcharge. So we would kind of like to analyze those as well as how these are classified. So you'll see a lot of the newer ones, we're going with the Class C or infraction, because I think even at the state level, they're sort of reducing this, trying not to criminalize everything, which is another thing that, you know, you realize over time with enforcement that, you know, yeah, you could issue something to someone that could have 6 months in jail, but we're not really going to do that with many of our municipal codes. So since we're not using that, then making them an infraction might be a better route for us. So we would like to do that, and I did offer if I was able to get an intern on board, that might be a good project for the intern to look at these and see what other cities are doing, but also do some number crunching on how we're analyzing those. But for today, we're just recommending these, you know, a number of new, so I did go through each title of our municipal code and kind of thought anything that we might want to regulate, and also picked up ordinances that we've adopted over time, because we haven't amended this. We did a significant amendment and study in 2014. So 10 years ago, we did a major study with a memorandum and everything, and then we amended it in 2017 to add the parking violation for Walmart, but we haven't amended it since. So, you know, we moved our stormwater to Title 16, and we've adopted some other codes. So most of those hopefully have been picked up, in addition to the cannabis production establishments. Those were all added as well, with a $500 fine. So we're happy to answer any questions, but we do want to come back, you know, we are intending, as time permits, to come back with more comprehensive analysis of the numbers and even the fine.
So Lisa, just a clarifying question, because it's in the staff report, but you had said that the fine amounts, at least in the staff report, are based more on case law. Are any fines based on any state statute? Or is it just case law, and so there's kind of that general guideline that you're talking about, that fines can't be excessive, cruel, or unusual, and that it's based off precedent? Is there any other
Yeah, so the fine,
variability or guidelines that you used in coming up with those as a committee, generally?
yeah, the fine amounts, I don't know if I said, I didn't mean that the actual fine amounts are based on case law, but the standard, that it needs to be reasonable.
Oh, okay.
Just the reasonableness is the case law standard, but no, the cases don't talk about, hey, it should be at
Okay, that's what
this
so
level.
how did we come up with
So
amounts then?
we do also look at, and this is what we did initially, is the state has this SMOT list for every state code violation. And so you can look at those and say, oh, what's kind of similar, what does
Okay.
the state do, and how does the state, and then we go to ours, and, you know, ours are pretty minimal. And yeah, looking at what other cities have done, and also that analysis of, hey, how much does this have an impact, how, you know, damaging could it be, like if it's damaging public property or has the potential for significant damage, then that's how we looked. But this could use more analysis, you know, on just, hey, what are other cities doing, you know, for some specific ones. But we also wanted our chart to be relative. So we also looked at, okay, well, how did we list stormwater violations previously? You know, and it was 250. But we also looked at the business licensing and felt like that should really go up, because, you know, businesses should be, you know, we do have some problems. That's the other thing, is that it seems like $100 fine is not enough of a financial sanction for business licensing and other sorts of violations.
Okay.
You know,
Thank you.
So like on animal control, it was 250, I think. What would that be? And then when you say there's the state 90% charge, so is that really double that if somebody gets charged with that? I don't understand what the 90%.
yes, well, and that's why I would love an intern to help, because there's language in the statute that says you can't, that the surcharge needs to be separate from the fine, but the way everybody's interpreting it, and it's currently coded, that surcharge actually comes out of the fine. And so we can bring you a chart that the Justice Court has prepared that says, okay, for $100 fine, here's where the money goes. And so
So it
But
comes
some-
out of that fine, it's not in addition to that fine?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
So
I'm
there-
thinking
and
you got
there's-
a $250 fine and then a $225 surcharge on top of that, and I'm like,
Yes.
ugh.
So initially, that's the way I was reading the new statute, is that it needed to be in addition to, but the initial response back was, no, it's included in that. But some of the 90% does come back to the local jurisdiction. So it's not a straight, not like we get some of the 90, and then it goes to all these other places. And when we bring back that analysis, we can show you how complicated it is, but, and then there's different surcharges. Like there's also, I think it's up to $50 or $60 now, that's just a straight fee that goes to court security. And so it does get complicated, and that's why we decided, let's not tackle, we probably wouldn't bring this to you for another 6 months. So we wanted to get these on the books so the officers can start,
So what would be an example of an animal control ticket that would be given? I mean, if somebody's dog's out running the street, are they gonna get a $250 ticket?
Typically, the animal control is issued by the county. We contract with the county. But the municipal code violations that it would be is intentionally feeding of wild deer, elk, or moose, or the possession of wild animals. So, which we were recently talking about potentially having
Can't feed the bears anymore?
Raccoons.
so,
Raccoons can't
Raccoons.
most of, what we've done is we've adopted the Davis County Animal Control ordinances, and we've also, we've contracted with them to do that. So typically it would be their fines on those, but our own, under Title VII, Chapter 2, would be intentional feeding of wild deer, elk, or moose, or the possession of wild animals. But I didn't want to have, anyway, you can just use animal control violation for those 2 or 3 sections of this chapter. Alternatively, we could spell those out if you wanted, but then this would get really long.
Are you done? Okay. On the default severity, I'm assuming MB and MC are misdemeanor, level B, misdemeanor C. Is that right?
Yes,
And then
yes.
what is IN?
IN is an infraction.
Okay.
And so, as I mentioned, a municipal, cities have the authority to issue a citation up to a Class B misdemeanor. To issue
Okay.
a citation and prosecute. So that's
Yes.
where our jurisdiction ends, is anything
Sure.
above that goes
Okay.
outside the city. But, so Class B is up to $1,000 fine and/or 6 months in jail. And a Class C misdemeanor can go up to $750 and 6 months in jail. And an infraction is only $750 with no jail time. And so that's kind of where the direction, I think, that the state is going in this decriminalizing of things like traffic violations and parking tickets. Should it really have some jail time? But, so that was some of the judge's comments as well, especially when we got into our Title 14 violations. So we just went ahead and said, did we put everything or almost everything? I think we went ahead, yeah, everything in Title 14, which is our traffic code, went to an infraction. And then by state law, zoning code violations are limited to Class C. So we're not even authorized by state law to go up to B anymore. Although there's a lot of discretion, so for instance, you could do that, or you could also say, hey, this is a nuisance. We're not even going under the zoning code, we're gonna go under a nuisance. So there are some ways to ratchet that up, which is also what I did in stormwater. So we have this new Title 16 with stormwater, but, we're going to have another personnel in that, and we might be doing some more enforcement. So I did spell out a lot more Title 16 violations, which is our stormwater, but we have a couple in there, like your stormwater permit and a stormwater permit violation. Those are Class B misdemeanors. So basically, we could use either. We could use a Class C, if you're washing out your truck, or if they were under a permit and we wanted to go to a B, then we could choose the B.
So clarify for me the actual fine listed versus the 1,000, the 750 that you just
This is the
mentioned.
suggested minimum fine, and so that's
Okay.
really where the judge is going.
Yeah, judge
Okay.
has discretion above
Okay.
that amount.
Then is it a maximum fine of $1,000 for like a class B?
Those, yeah.
Okay.
State law. We
Okay,
couldn't go any
okay.
higher.
I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Also, I noticed that you have mandatory appearance, yes or no, but some of them are blank. Is that,
Yes, so we were hoping to fill those in before now, because I don't know how to fill those out, so Tammy's working on that.
Got it.
And
Just
once we
not there
finalize
yet.
it, because I don't even know what some of those are, so she's working on filling those in. But last time we adopted that, we didn't even have those columns. But what I did this year is I went to the actual state SMOT list, and I copy and pasted Centerville, so that there's, the chart that we give them this year, because they have to input this as well, is gonna look exactly as they input it. So I thought it'd be easier on the back end for them to just use their chart. So I don't know who fills those out, but Tammy said she could find out and fill those out.
okay, thank you. Oh, also, what does compliance credit mean? Is that
I don't know.
same thing, just trying to, you're just gotta get them, okay.
Yeah, and so you'll
That's just
see,
fine.
like even on nuisance, it wasn't in the previous SMOT list.
Yes,
So I'm
okay.
not sure what that
That's
is.
just fine. I just wondered, I saw some of them were
I
zeros.
think we did so the DL reportable is whether it's a driver's license reportable.
Okay,
BCI report, that's your background. I don't know, the chief might know what some of these are, but FTA flag, I don't know.
does, I'm assuming something your intern will help with, or Tammy, or,
Tammy's gonna fill those out.
okay,
Along, yeah, and then the intern would be, yeah, whether these should be B or C or infraction, and also double checking all of our fines and comparing,
Okay.
doing a more substantive comparison
okay.
with those. A lot of times our officers don't issue municipal code violations. They mainly go to the state law, because if there's a state violation, then that's what we issue. But this is gonna give us a lot more options to do municipal code violations, which are sort of our local violations. And some of these we use more than others, but
Portable toilet location violation?
yes, so that would
Porta
Come up
potties.
often?
Porta potty.
Actually, I bet
porta
more
potty
often
in the
than-
right of way.
It would
Can't
be
have
like
it.
on a construction site, and
No,
it
I
happened
know, I
more
know.
often than you think.
I'm just laughing when I saw that. I'm like, who's gonna stick their porta potty in some bad place? But okay. Bad contractors.
Yeah.
I also wondered what we had against golf carts, but that's all right too.
Oh,
Golf carts.
too soon.
4 years, 5 years later, who knows? Too soon.
Long as that been.
What is, wait, I don't know the back, oh, you guys can tell
Yeah.
me after. Tell me afterwards.
Any other questions for Lisa right now?
And the law does not technically require a public hearing on this, but this is one that we just think, yeah, people should be able to comment on some of these. And if the chief or lieutenant have any comments as well, they're welcome to chime in, correct anything I said.
You know, when I saw it on the agenda, went over with Brown, I thought, this probably isn't a public hearing matter, but I thought, I like it, because it is fines, and changing the fines, and they get the public's input on it, so I like that, so.
But were there
Chief,
no
do you have something to
fines?
say on it? Go ahead while the chief's walking up. Looks
Were-
like he was getting
Were there
ready.
no fines for these things before? I don't understand why. I guess-
Yeah, we did,
Easily
the
confused.
code, so in most of our municipal code, at the end of each chapter, we do need to specify a fine for any criminal provision that we put in our code, but we just put at the end, subject to, this is a Class B misdemeanor. That's just the standard clause that I put at the end of every chapter, or this is a Class C, and so it would be up to, but no, we had never specified, and so we haven't really been citing people for any of these, because it's not on our list. We've been citing them for other state code violations. Like I said, there's a lot of discretion in deciding, oh, well, what kind of violation is this? It could be 3 or 4 different violations, and then they would just pick the state code.
Yeah, so, this was an important thing to look at and to consider. We do have a lot of state codes that hasn't been looked at for a long time to figure out what the fine should be and make that appropriate when compared to the Utah code, especially when they're very similar violations. We did look at our parking violations and decided to increase those just a little bit to make them a little more equitable as far as across the board, understanding that inflation has occurred and maybe people might care a little bit more about not violating the law, so we increased it just a little bit. But the important part is to get it on that SMOT list. As an officer out in the field, when you're issuing a citation, if it's not on the SMOT list, it doesn't show up on our drop-down, and so it doesn't get used. This will give us the opportunity to select on the drop-downs, city codes, and then we can see all of them that are now will be on the SMOT list, and we can select those. So there's been a number of codes that are on the books that are city codes with penalties, crimes, that we haven't been able to even charge because from a logistical matter, it's not available to us to charge. So this has been a pretty important thing to go through. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this is a public hearing matter, so I will now open the public hearing regarding our fine schedule amendment. Anybody that from the public that chooses to comment, identify yourself and where you're from. So that public hearing is now open. Nobody online? Seeing no comments from the public, we will close the public hearing. We will come back to see if there's any further thoughts that you've had that you want to ask questions on or make statements on before I look for a motion. Any? Anybody inclined to make a motion on this ordinance?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2024-07, adopting the updated Centerville fine schedule for fees, or fines and penalties for Centerville Municipal Code violations.
Second.
A motion, a second, further discussion. Do a roll call vote starting with Councilman Summerhays going to the right.
Aye.
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 That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council. All right, let's go to item number 2 on the business items. This is the professional service agreement that we have with the Ferguson Group, and Nate is walking up to the podium to talk about it. Nate?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. As Mayor mentioned, we have tonight an agreement for you between the city and the Ferguson Group. The Ferguson Group helps the city secure federal funding, whether that be through grants or congressional earmarks or other means. I've worked with them, well, the city's worked with them for the past number of years. I personally have met with them about every other week for a little over a year now, and they have been great to work with. It was the Ferguson Group that helped us secure the congressional earmark to get the $1.5 million for the Oak Ridge tank. They've helped us out with a number of other grants as well.
Have we got that grant yet?
Yes, it's been awarded.
But we haven't seen the money.
It's a reimbursable, so we will spend the money and then submit for reimbursement once we start construction.
But they have everything else that they need, like it's ready to go, they're waiting on us.
I believe it's going through the state process right now. I think. We're waiting for state approval, but yeah, it's on the right
Federal
path.
website's still a nightmare, but
Yeah.
Mike and I still need to work through that. Or we just let Nate deal with the, because he has access to the website for reimbursables, but Mike and I don't have access for point of contact and other issues. But the money side is taken care of, which is what we really care about. We'll work on the other part, but.
And a little bit of a side note, but related, while the Ferguson Group does help us secure those federal fundings, they've also been very helpful when maybe we weren't getting the response that we wanted out of the EPA. They have contacts with them that they were able to help encourage that and facilitate those conversations, and they've helped us with some of the reporting requirements for some of the other grants. So anyway, they've been great to work with. The contract before you is for the next 2 years at a cost of $5,000 per month, and staff would recommend that you approve that agreement. And as Mayor mentioned, we do have Mr. Mike Miller from the Ferguson Group, as well as some of his staff. So it's all right with you, Mayor, I'd like to give him a chance to speak to us.
I would love that, Nate. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Mike Miller with the Ferguson Group. I'm joined by my colleagues, Zach Israel, and also Catherine Riggs, who's our grants specialist, who's been working with the city of Centerville over the last year or so on several grants. If it's all right with you, I'll give you a brief overview of our work with and on behalf of Centerville, and then provide an overview of our work plan through the end of this calendar year. Mayors, does that sound okay with you?
That would be great, thanks.
Sure, thanks. So as Nate mentioned, our team meets every 2 weeks for anywhere from 30 minutes to 90 minutes, or however long it takes, with your staff to discuss the status of federal legislation and funding opportunities for the city's projects, and also to review not only existing projects, but to look at new ideas as well during those meetings. During the meetings, we evaluate any relevant funding opportunities that have been released since our last meeting that might fit the city's priorities. And we focus in on both the eligibility and selection criteria for each relevant grant, or in the case of appropriations, what types of projects have been previously earmarked by Congress, just to make sure that we're not missing good opportunities to secure funding for the city's key projects. During the first part of 2024, we focused on the annual federal appropriations process. That's where a couple of years ago, we were successful in getting the green tank funding. And we worked with your staff and Congresswoman Malloy's office to develop an appropriations request for funding for some new culverts under I-15. We targeted the congressional earmark for this project because, well, first, there is precedent for culvert earmarking in Congress. And second, eligibility for existing culvert replacement, that grant program has certain eligibility requirements, including aquatic life benefits. And our project probably would not meet the mark on that point for that competitive grant. So after evaluating several potential probable or possible opportunities and projects, we submitted the culvert project to Congresswoman Malloy's office early in the process and well in advance of the deadline. But unfortunately, we were unsuccessful this year in securing an earmark. It is important to note that Congresswoman Malloy was limited again to submitting only 15 projects for consideration covering her entire district. And there was significant competition this year from entities throughout her district, many of which had not received prior earmarks. During the past 6 months, we also focused on evaluating additional grant opportunities, including a transportation safety grant and several public safety grants that we looked at. None of the public safety grant opportunities were really good matches for the city for several reasons. But we do believe that the transportation safety grant is likely to be a good opportunity in the next cycle, which should open up later this year or early in 2025. We also worked with your staff and drafted and submitted an application to the Bureau of Reclamation for a grant to continue the water meter installation project. The awards were recently announced, and unfortunately, our application this round was unsuccessful. But again, that was, I believe, 2 rounds ago, we were successful in securing that grant through the Bureau to help fund the installation of water meters in the city.
We will have a debrief with the Bureau staff to go over our applications so we can strengthen it for the upcoming round, should the city decide to apply again for this grant. We'll continue moving forward to develop other opportunities for competitive grants over the next 6 months, while we're also going to start talking with Congresswoman Malloy's office about FY26 appropriations and earmark opportunities there. With the Bureau, we'll be looking at potentially a relatively large drought resiliency project that would have several component projects, possibly including a replacement well, water transmission lines, park irrigation, and other water-related infrastructure. And we anticipate focusing on that grant opportunity with your staff between sort of mid-July, late July, and mid-October when that grant application is due. And we will continue reviewing funding opportunities with your staff this summer and looking for other opportunities to fund city infrastructure and programmatic opportunities. Before closing out, I wanted to give my colleagues Zach and Catherine a couple of moments to talk a little bit about with Zach, congressional action, and then Kat, a little bit about some of the grants work that she's done, particularly in terms of reporting and closing out grants. Zach?
Yes, thank you, Mike, and good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Pleasure to be with you all tonight. So my name is Zach Israel. I'm a principal at the Ferguson Group and have worked with Centerville for a number of years now. And on the congressional appropriations front, as you all know, not too long ago, current Congressman John Curtis won the Republican primary for the U.S. Senate seat that Mitt Romney is retiring from. And so it's extremely likely, as you all know, that Mr. Curtis will be your new U.S. Senator for a 6-year term starting in January of 2025. And that's significant for a whole host of reasons, but for our purposes of discussion tonight, Congressman Curtis does and has participated in the congressionally directed spending process or community project funding since they returned in 2021. And so he will very likely continue doing that when he's a U.S. Senator. And what's significant to note about that is that U.S. Senators do not have a cap to how many projects that they can submit through the congressionally directed spending process for their whole state that they represent. And so because neither Senator Romney nor Senator Lee have participated in this since they came back in 2021, starting next year, we're going to have another opportunity, the city will, to submit those types of requests to one of your U.S. senators for the first time since 2021. And that's really exciting, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. And I know Centerville has never been a place that John Curtis has represented before, so as are lots of parts of the state, you'll be part of his new constituency in that respect. But it is just worth noting that he has been involved in this process and that it will be available to the city starting in the spring of 2025. So I'll turn that back over to you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. And then Catherine, would you mind talking just a little bit about your grants work on behalf of the city?
Sure. Hello, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having us. My name is Catherine Riggs, and I'm a senior grant specialist at the Ferguson Group, and I focus on the discretionary or the competitive grant side of the funding process. And with a lot of the work that we've done in securing the funds, after the funds are received, there's still more work that has to be done. And what I've helped the city with is their grants management, especially for their Water Smart grants. And there are reporting requirements, there's progress reporting, but there's also financial reporting. And even getting into the system proved challenging for us to be able to track this entire grant process, but we were able to successfully navigate that system. We were able to complete all of the closeout requirements and documentation, which is critical to remain compliant with federal funding so that you can continue to receive more federal funding. So I was very excited that we were able to navigate that very challenging process, but we were successful in it, and we have completed the closeout for the existing grant, so we are ready to apply for more.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it. Mr. Mayor and council, we're happy to answer any questions you have, discuss any projects or any other items that you'd like to discuss. We, once again, truly appreciate the opportunity to represent the city of Centerville. It's a pleasure working with your staff. Your staff is professional. They're fun, and you folks have a lot going for you, and we're just happy to be, an extension of your staff and have the opportunity to represent you in Washington. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, yeah, I have a question for any of you or all of you. Zach kind of answered my question, but I'm going to expand on it a little bit. My question was going to be, we seem to work through Congressman Stewart a lot, and then Congresswoman Malloy after Congressman Stewart stepped down. Obviously, our other three representatives, they don't represent Centerville. But my question was going to be, how come we don't work through the Senate process? And then Zach kind of answered that question. So we hope that potentially Senator Curtis, if he's successful in November, that he will lean that way, being a former mayor himself and a congressperson. But is there any additional type of funding that you can go after with the Senate versus what's available to with Congresswoman Malloy's office?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for that, I'm going to ask Zach to talk about that. Zach?
Yes, so that's a great question. So the congressionally directed spending process, or as it's known in the House side, community project funding, that is the major mechanism on an annual basis whereby local governments such as the city of Centerville can make those types of requests for projects that meet the requirements for the accounts that are available. Now, there are a few things that we can, the city could request from both Senator Lee and even Senator Romney. Although, because Senator Romney is retiring in 6 months, it's a little too late for this, but there is, through the annual appropriations process, there's also something called programmatic language requests and report language requests. And a programmatic request, which the two Senate offices, or at least Senator Romney does participate in, and possibly Senator Lee, is basically a request asking their support for a certain amount of funding for a federal program or agency or something like that. So it's not for a specific project that goes to the city, but it's the city is supportive of X agency's program, and you want the senators to support that. That is something that that they often do consider. And then a report language request, very simply, is sort of language directing or urging a federal agency to sort of take some type of action or lean in a certain direction when it comes to a policy item. So again, different in nature from an earmark, but it is something that is available on the Senate side that the two senators do consider. And then the very last thing, every 2 years, there's a bill called the Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA. And it's every even-numbered year Congress considers that. So there's one this year for 2024. And that's regarding the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And so there's a bunch of policy changes in that bill. But there's also a list of projects that basically, or rather authorizations of projects under the Corps of Engineers in specific locations throughout the country. And those are submitted by members of Congress to be included in the WRDA legislation. And so I don't believe Senator Lee participates in that, but that was something that I believe Senator Romney may have also participated in. And so I'll just leave it there. But the main way to make those types of requests for funding from Congress is through the earmark process.
Thank you, Zach. And just to add one item about the senators, while they haven't participated in the congressionally directed spending, again, that's what they call it on the Senate side, both of your senators have been great in supporting our competitive grant requests. They have written letters of support. They've produced those letters very quickly, and they've been strong letters. And they have definitely done some good work on your behalf as far as going after the competitive grant funding.
Mike, so just a question on that. Why are they not participating in it? I'm not understanding why they wouldn't choose to participate in that. Are they not able to?
So it's a great question.
I mean, we got government without representation here?
Good question.
Well, it is.
Like that's a fail on their part.
It's definitely in many quarters, earmarks are controversial or have been in the past. When I was working in Congress on Capitol Hill, they back in the 80s and up through 1994, virtually everyone participated in earmarking. You may recall that after I left Capitol Hill, there was some controversy surrounding several congressional earmarks, notably the Bridge to Nowhere, the Teapot Museum, and a couple of others that attracted a lot of negative attention. And in 2010, for many different reasons, it started with the House of Representatives, actually. The Republican caucus in the House decided that they were going to place a moratorium on allowing earmarked funding in appropriations bills. And that moratorium lasted about a decade, actually a little bit over a decade. During that time, there was a lot of discussion about earmarking, its failures, its successes. And in 2020, started to be very serious discussion about reintroducing congressional earmarking because Congress recognized that agencies sometimes, don't, or often don't understand the needs of, cities like Centerville. And your member of Congress does know that. And your senators, they know what your needs are. So Congress decided to reintroduce earmarking in fiscal year 2022. There were some very severe limitations placed on earmarking. There was a lot of interest in making sure that there was a lot of daylight, there were hearings, and a lot of rules, including disclosures, that made folks feel more comfortable about going back to congressional earmarking. There were some members, however, some Democrats, some Republicans, who still were uncomfortable with earmarking. They thought that it was an opportunity for invited abuse of the system, and they decided to not participate in earmarking. I don't know precisely why Senator Romney and Senator Lee decided to not participate in earmarking. Many senators did, but others of their colleagues did not. And so that's what we were left with. However, when we started working for this city, Congressman Stewart, who is a Republican appropriator, was very much in favor of earmarking, and that's how we were able to secure the funding for the Green Tank. The city was. That's a very long-winded answer to your very concise question.
No, that's actually super, super helpful to understand the history. So let me just back up for 1 second. You say that we were unsuccessful in obtaining an earmark for, were you saying culvert? This was Congressman Malloy. Can you expand on, apparently she supports earmarks.
Yes.
Okay. But she could only submit 15 projects. We were still one of those 15. I guess understanding that is helpful to me because I'm saying we're spending $60,000 a year to have you guys working for us. And while I appreciate all of the work you've done, we have to see grants coming through and being successful with that. And if our you know, obviously it's helpful to know that you believe that our Senate candidate, John Curtis, may be helpful that way. And you said the green tank was an earmark as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think it's important to point out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, is when I talked with Congressman Stewart, he's not necessarily a fan of earmarks, but he says if they're going to happen, I'm going to get them for my people.
That's my concern,
And-
is
and-
if we have national representatives who are not willing to do that, then that's not, I mean, we're still gonna pay.
Because other people are getting it,
but
and we're
Congress
not,
is
and
always
we're all
up to
putting the
it.
same money in
Yeah.
the pot.
But here's the point I was getting to, is that we were initially one of the first ones with our green tank grant. And now his office, and now leading to Congresswoman Malloy, they have advertised so much heavier with their other constituents that you addressed it, that there's more applicants that's chasing after that money. I guess we have more competition, so to speak, amongst our other cities. Is that correct or incorrect?
I think that that's correct. You know, in fiscal year 2022, you know, we were ahead of the game. You know, the city was, Ferguson Group was. This is something that we've done for decades. I've personally been involved in, you know, congressional earmarking since 1983, when I first started working on Capitol Hill. So, you know, we knew what we were doing, and we were able to secure one of, and in fact, I believe in the first year, Congressman Stewart was limited to 10 requests, and he actually, I think, only submitted 6, and Centerville was one of those.
Yeah.
There, you know, and not to either, you know, explain what's happened or, you know, what might happen in the future, but in many instances, you'll see members, you know, provide earmarks to cities and counties, to their constituents, and then they'll want to you know, make that available to, you know, other cities and counties that haven't had a chance yet to you know, to secure an earmark. But you know, that comes around again, and you know, I think that you know, we're developing good projects, and I believe that, you know, in any year we stand an excellent chance of securing one of those 15 slots available to us on the House side, and now with the opportunity on the Senate, you know, potentially there's no guarantees, but you know, it looks like there's a strong likelihood that we'll have a Senate opportunity as well. Then the earmarking opportunities will expand for us for fiscal year 26, which actually the process will begin this fall for us. You know, we're going to get ahead of the game. We're going to get in and meet with your representatives and start talking with them about, you know, what they want to do and what we want to do for fiscal year 26. But again, that's, you know, part of what we do. We also help, you know, the city weed through the literally thousands of competitive grant opportunities that are pushed out by the federal government annually. And we, you know, read through those. We do issue briefs on them. We determine which are relevant to our municipal clients, which are relevant to Centerville, and then we evaluate those with your staff and determine whether they're a good fit. And I would say that, you know, for every one grant that, you know, we think is a good fit for the city of Centerville, you know, we've weeded through scores that probably won't work for you in terms of eligibility or selection criteria. So we're constantly working on that. And as I mentioned, we're gearing up to do another grant proposal this fall with the Bureau of Reclamation for a drought resiliency project. So in addition to doing the earmarking, there are competitive grant opportunities that we work at as well.
And that's where I think you could be useful, is with those grant opportunities. The earmarks, and correct me if I'm wrong again, but those are subject to congressional approval as far as within their budget, because with Congressman Stewart originally, when I was talking with him, we had submitted, not only did he submit all his 10, but we had submitted 1.5 for the 1250 West extension and 1.5 for the tank. And there, because of cutbacks at Congress, we weren't able to get the road, but we were able to get the tank. So that's where I get concerned about, I mean, where Congress falls out on how much they allocate for that kind of thing, as well as, and that's crystal ball. I don't know if any of us can guess what happens there.
Mr. Mayor, if I can add a few points. I've worked with the Ferguson Group now for 10 years. So I've worked with the Ferguson Group in Yuma and in Ephraim, which really, they're the best organization out there that I've worked with. But to extend what Mike had shared, reading through a NOFA, a Notice of Funding Availability, takes hours, 10 to 40. Council Member Hurst, I'm now confusing. Councilmember Hurst, you can appreciate reading grant funding, but 10 to 40 hours of what it takes to read through a NOFA just to determine if we're eligible for it. The amount of staff time it takes just to understand the grant, to determine if we're eligible for it, we just don't have staff time to do that, to even determine if we're eligible for it. So having a resource like the Ferguson Group to do that analysis for us, because they're not just reading for us, but other clients as well, and they can let us know what we're eligible for, is so helpful in that alone. But as the former grants manager of Yuma, this was one of my primary roles working with the Ferguson Group, was, again, the whole grant management process, and I appreciate Catherine and her knowledge. That is probably one of the more complicated parts of the whole thing. Applying for the grant is one thing, which the Ferguson Group puts in the right talking points, the buzzwords that really get their attention. And one time we applied for a grant and we failed to get the grant, but what they do, and I'm sure they do that now, is we have a follow-up meeting with that agency, and what did we miss? And they tell you, you missed it here. But what was really valuable is when we met with the Army Corps of Engineers or Bureau of Reclamation, our application made it to the top because we care about our city, and we took the time to spend time with them to understand their process, and that's what they care about. That's where the Ferguson Group really helps with the intangibles that is just beyond the money part. But Centerville has representation at the federal level, and as we're seeing the track going, as things are becoming less state-centric and more federal, which is concerning, but we need that representation at the federal side, and we need some representation there that represent us. And so I really appreciate the full wraparound. I think the dollar amount is absolutely great, but just making sure we're available or aware of any grant possibilities, it means a lot to me. I will share when I met with Congresswoman Malloy in May when I went back for National Police Week, she actually reached out to me and says, hey, you're in town, why don't we meet on my last day? And I appreciated that. I did ask her, I says, how do you feel about us working with the Ferguson Group? And she says, they are the best organization to work with. We cringe when we talk to any other lobbyists, but the Ferguson Group is agreeable, they're helpful, they're great to work with. And that meant a lot to me because I want to make sure we don't have a lobbyist who's pushy, which some of them are out there, but they're actually working with them. And that meant a lot to me as well. When we received the first, and lastly, the first earmark for the green steel tank, Connor, who works for Congresswoman Malloy now, did work for Congressman Stewart, he shared at that info session that Centerville actually kind of set the bar of the expectations of what Congressman Stewart was looking for in applications. And that's due to the Ferguson Group, setting that expectation. Now, I'm disappointed we haven't received one since, because we did set the expectation, but we just need to have some really good projects. Anyway, that's what we're working on now. So the plan for the next year for me is I'd really like to develop a stronger approach, not just the public works taking advantage of the funding. Mike and I have met and we've discussed how other departments really can advantage it, but I don't want to waste staff time. So I don't want somebody from Parks, Public Works, Police just sitting in a meeting while we're just talking about public works projects. So is there a possibility of putting 15 minutes to Public Works, 15 minutes to Parks, 15 minutes to Police? When there's availability, we don't want to just meet for the sake of meeting. So I really want to see if there's a way we can develop a stronger game plan.
That does, I appreciate you saying that because I was going to ask, it does seem like the grants that we're talking about that have been gone after are typically public works projects. So I was going to say, why are we not having other departments chase after them? Mike, maybe you can weigh in. Maybe there's just not as much funding available.
I'm going to defer to Mike because we've had this chat a few times now, and he'll say it better than I will.
Okay.
So, Mike.
Well, a couple of things first. The bipartisan infrastructure law, the big infrastructure package, really put everyone's focus on public works, on water projects, on highway, all those kinds of things that we saw in the big infrastructure bill, which became the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so, there were and continue through the end of 2026 to be significant funding opportunities for water, wastewater, highway construction, those kinds of projects. Some of the types of, programs that we've been able to, go after previously, that, they were not included in that bipartisan infrastructure law. And so their funding remained relatively flat over that period of time. So that's one thing, is that there was much more availability of funds in infrastructure areas than in other areas. The other thing is that, we have in the past looked at, non-infrastructure type projects and programs. We've done a number of, we've taken a number of looks at programs, for example, on public safety. And, we've worked closely with the chief and met with him on several occasions. And we've all agreed that, for one reason or another, those grants that are available just don't work for the city of Centerville, at least the ones that have been coming out, most of them or many of them. And so we've not gone after those because, there's a very, very small chance of success for Centerville. And I think that those were all the right decisions that we made as far as the public safety analysis. When we start talking about other types of projects, programs, we can look at parks and recreation. We can look at, but there are other areas that we work in, for other clients, and there are some needs that the city of Centerville, doesn't have. When we start looking at some of our housing work, there might be some opportunity there for Centerville, but we focus more on the infrastructure because the socioeconomic situation, is not similar to some of our other, clients where there is, poverty or extreme poverty. And there are a lot of programs, particularly in this administration, that would, fund those types of projects. As administrations come and go and as Congress comes and goes, the eligibility and selection criteria for federal grants changes. And so we keep an eye on those. And, we're going to have an election this year, and elections have consequences. And those consequences do find their ways into those very lengthy, very thick NOFOs, notice of funding opportunities. And, there may very well be some additional opportunities, that we don't have currently for non-infrastructure projects or programs that are important to the city. One final item is a number of projects that we have gone after funding for that don't fit really anywhere. There's this one account in appropriations called the Economic Development Initiative. It's administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's always been sort of the catch-all. If it doesn't fit anywhere else, you characterize it as promoting economic development and you get it in there. Some members of Congress and senators, though, don't like to earmark EDI, Economic Development Initiative, projects precisely because they're sort of a catch-all and they don't really see a federal nexus, between the project and the federal funding. So, but we do, alternative or active transportation projects. We can do, bike, pedestrian parks. I will tell you that Centerville is not alone in wanting more pickleball courts. And if there was in fact, Catherine, I'm going to ask you, is there a pickleball account available?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. We don't know what's going to happen after this election.
So again, another very long-winded answer, and I apologize, but I agree with Brant that what we'd like to do is make sure that your departments, are aware that we have these opportunities and that we are very happy to meet for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and an hour, whatever it takes to, figure out what, your priorities are and whether we can match those to federal opportunities.
So this is kind of, and I certainly don't mean to be offensive with this, but one of my concerns is, yes, you got the green tank funding, it's an earmark. Does not appear that we have won a competitive funding pursuit yet, with possibly the exception of the 75,000. I don't know if that was competitive or not. But I guess my question is, as we can't consider the green tank into perpetuity, that it is forever the reason we should continue to keep hiring the Ferguson group, what is your response to that? And like I said, I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just saying, at some point we have to say, are the costs justifying the end product?
And council member, that is a very fair and excellent question. I think that all of our clients, all of our cities, and counties should ask precisely that question. We don't represent, private entities. We represent public entities that are responsible to taxpayers, to your constituents, to your voters. And so I'm not offended at all by that question. In fact, I think it's an excellent question. In fact, one other sort of anecdote, the reason that I actually got interested in lobbying and in lobbying with the Ferguson Group was when I was on Capitol Hill. I found it really annoying when a lobbyist would come in with a city or a county or a special district or what have you, a public entity, taxpayer funded, and they weren't prepared for their meetings. And all they were doing was just sort of escorting their clients around Capitol Hill, and they weren't informed, and it was annoying to me, and that kind of sparked my interest in doing this type of work. Are we successful every time? No, we're not. Do we put the city in the best position possible to achieve success? I think that we do. Each and every time we strive towards that. I think that over time, because we put you in the best position you can be in, I think that we will enjoy more success. And I think that we'll have more success than failure over time. On both competitive grants as well as with the earmarking, we've not had success recently. But I think that will change. And we're working to make that change. But we do what we can on behalf of the city. We think that you're in great position, and we think that the relationship will be positive for you, very positive for you over time.
Mayor, can I just ask a homework or request a homework assignment? I think when Ferguson presented last time, we asked for kind of and Mike alluded to it, this work plan through the end of the year. But we talked about the 1 to 5 year forecast of, we don't know what the grants are going to look like out into the future, but we know maybe internally what we're trying to do.
We know our needs, and that's a conversation.
Yes, and so I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I'm just, as a homework assignment, can we just get like a one-page, simple 1 to 5 year outlook of as to the types of grants we're going to be chasing?
Yeah, I don't know when the last time is we've updated. I'm sure they're working on it. I'm not intimately involved in these meetings all the time.
Yeah.
Our federal
So that's why I'm saying
priorities.
it's kind of a
Mike,
homework
do
assignment
we have an updated
request.
one of those?
If other council members feel the same way, but.
Yeah, I do think and I think the other thing that would be helpful, and I talked about it for just a minute with Brant today, was it would be helpful to see what it is that you have chased, even if it was a loss. Like, it helps to know, like, okay, we see that, I don't expect that we're going to win every single pursuit we ever try to get, but it's also easy to forget that you did try for the drought resiliency grant, and
Yeah, you kind of see a work history whether you were awarded it or not.
Yeah, it just helps, I think, as a council, for us to say, okay, we understand where the time is being spent. And I always worry about, and I know you do this collectively with a bunch of cities because you are reviewing a bunch of grants all at the same time, and you're looking for the right fit for each individual client. And so we're collectively paying towards that time is what I'm assuming. But it's also a little bit harder as a council member to justify that to residents when we don't know exactly how that 5,000 is getting spent every month.
I totally agree. I was I was a little apprehensive when we first went with them, and then we got the still tank, and I'm thinking, yes, but then we really haven't had much since. $5,000 is a lot when Brant says, we don't have staff time to do this. We could have a full-time employee doing this for $5,000 a month. So.
I will say this, though, you could have a full-time person. I, just having dealt with NOFA recently at my office, they change every year, and they are getting more and more complicated.
Well, and I agree with that, and I'm not suggesting
city
we
staff
have one,
member
because
wouldn't
we
have
don't have
FaceTime
we don't have a city,
connections.
I mean, an employee isn't going to.
I don't know if
It's
they
not a
can.
full-time employee thing, but I am concerned it's very expensive for what I see that we're getting in return, other than our steel tank. If we hadn't got our steel tank, would we even be considering going with them again?
Well, that's my concern, is that in order to continue to justify it. Mike, this is another question I have for you. I think I've asked it, and I know it's probably hard for you to answer, just because of the way funding goes from year to year, but I look at it and go, we're paying $60,000 a year. What rate of return should we expect on that? If you go to nonprofit companies that are hiring someone to help with grants, they'll tell you 5 times, so 300,000. If that's the case, we're still well within.
We're 25 times
Yeah.
on that one alone.
Well, if you just looked at the steel tank, that's about 5 years of being worth 60,000 a year.
Well, 1.5.
But I don't know that there's a number.
1.5 divided by 60,000 is 25. That's a 25 multiplier.
But you gotta times it by 5. You gotta say, they should be
Thank
bringing
you.
in
Sorry. Yes.
300
Yeah,
a
you're
year,
saying
so
fi-
5
it's a
years.
5-year period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I see
yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, we don't want, if it's just break even, we may as well just pay as we go. So I guess I'm saying, and I'm not trying to be hard on you guys. I think you've done some amazing things,
Well,
so.
and I'm thinking,
I'm just
maybe
trying
with
to-
the earmarks, maybe we'll get, I'm okay to do it again with saying that our senators weren't using the earmarks, and maybe they will now, maybe it will give us a better chance. But I'm also saying if I don't see a better return, and I probably won't go with them again. If we don't get anything in the next 2 years more than 75,000, I'm probably gonna be concerned.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm a little concerned about too. And Mike is aware of that. I mean, I heard him say very clearly, yes, this is public funds, and I think he's understanding where we're coming from. I guess I'm hoping, it sounds to me, Mike, not to put words in your mouth, but do you feel like, as you've had a little more time with this city and maybe gotten some feedback on some of these competitive pursuits, that we're better positioned for future competitive pursuits, such as the drought resiliency for the well?
So, couple of things. I think that, when you look at at the Ferguson Group firm-wide and our success on behalf of, all of our municipal clients, many of whom are, similar to Centerville, but different in some regards. Our return on investment is very high for most of our clients, most of the time. So I have, very strong reason to believe that we will enjoy success over time. We did in the first year, we did not have, success in securing funding in the second or the third year. And that, that troubles us, and we're looking for ways to make sure that, the coming years are better for the city and for us on your behalf. My colleague Catherine is expert in doing needs analysis or needs assessment reviews. And we've done that informally with the city on a number of occasions. And I would say that, COVID and the bipartisan infrastructure law threw us off a little bit in terms of our normal patterns, including, taking sort of the broad look at all of the different opportunities and grants and the projects that our clients have. And I think that, now that that's definitely in the rearview mirror, hopefully, we can get back to, doing some of the things that we normally do, which include doing full grants assessments and grants calendars, so that you can understand, and we can give you these reports. You can understand, what types of grants are going to be available, what time of year they're going to be available, and whether we recommend the city goes for those grants or not. And you can start to assess, whether it is worth, Centerville's time, effort, and money to continue to retain us. I will tell you that virtually all of our clients find tremendous value in having us on board. And we do, have some years. I had a client 2 years ago that was locked out of the appropriations process and didn't have a success. We wrote one grant for them and it was unsuccessful. The next year, we ended up with over $10 million in earmarks and over $1 million in grants for them. So, it varies from year to year and from client to client, but overall, our clients realize success over time.
For the benefit of the council, if anybody came to me and said, hey, if you invest $300,000 and you're gonna get $1.5 million, like that's, to not do that is the dumbest thing in the world.
For sure.
And so even when you talk about, hey, I don't know if I feel confident about this moving forward, I would counsel this council to exercise some patience, because these types of funding occur over a period of time. And so as we think about the return on investment, if you take this just on a personal level, the return vastly outweighs the investment.
So I agree with that, and
Yeah.
I'm okay to go with them again. One thing he said was one of my concerns to begin with, when he says that most of his customers are successful. I worry about our city size. Are we, maybe not where we need to be? I think it'd be interesting for us to know if any of the cities around us are using anybody like this. Not that we need to do what everybody else does, but that would be an interesting note for me to know. And I agree with Spencer, except if you win big and you keep putting the money back in, pretty soon you end up even. So I do want to see something in the next 2 years. I don't, you know what I mean? We did get really big return on our first go-around, but then
It's
we
25, it's gonna take 25 years to break even. You've only been, how many years have we engaged?
Is this year 5 and 6?
This is year 5, correct? This would be
That we're
the
approving.
beginning of year 5?
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying exercise some patience.
So I'm
to
willing
see
to
how it
give them
plays out.
another 2 years, but I want to see something in these 2
You're a
years.
demanding investor.
I am.
Okay.
I am.
So Councilor Armika, I can, as us cities, we do discuss, I know a number of cities actually they pay a lobbyist, just a lobbyist, to represent them on the federal side, and they pay $10,000 to $20,000 a year, but it doesn't include grant writing. It just includes them representing them, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, just going and speaking with them on behalf of you, but it doesn't include those types of services. There are a few other organizations out there that do have some grant writing. I don't feel it's as in-depth as what the Ferguson Group does. But again, lobbyists like that are just representing your interests, not giving you that full wraparound service and following you through the entire grant process. So that'd still be on us to do that. So that's what other cities are doing. There are a number of cities in the state. I don't know how many clients you have in the state, Mike, but 2 or 3. I know of at least one, but that there's, Mike will reach out and say, hey, look, so-and-so's putting out an RFP for services, and say, hey, are you okay with this? And I have shared that if there is some conflict, I will share there's potentially a conflict there, and we prefer you not represent them. But in most cases, there hasn't been a conflict because either it's Utah County or somewhere else, right? So what I do appreciate out of the Ferguson group is they do reach out to say, hey, we'd like to bid on this. So I appreciate that.
Mike, without going into, and I don't want you to do this, the detail, just tell me, for us, how do you determine the fee that you charge us?
Getting a discount.
So there are, a number of factors that go into that. We estimate the amount of our staff time at various levels that it's going to, take to do the job, and, on a monthly basis. And we have a fee schedule that is, that outlines, the cost of each of our staff's time, to work, for an hour. And that gives us a basis from which we go ahead and figure out, where we're going to go with our fees. Centerville is I'll just be honest with you. Centerville pays us on the low end of our scale, and that's fine with us. We don't do less work for you. We do as much work as it takes to get the job done, and then some, I think. We also look at what other firms are charging their clients, other firms that do the same type of work that we do representing municipal governments. That comes up during, request for proposal processes when we're invited to submit a proposal. After we do so, we take a look at our competitors' proposals and we find out how much they proposed. And we also, because it's a matter of public record, we can see how much other firms are being paid. And there are, some firms that charge more than us. There are some firms that are similar to our fees, and there are some that charge less. You get what you pay for, I think, in some cases. Although on the upper end, I think that's not necessarily true. So the other thing that we look at is we know we're representing municipal governments. We look at your size, what you can afford and what your scope of work is. And in talking with our clients, and including Centerville, we initially talked, I think at length about what a reasonable amount of professional fees would be for us to charge the city, given the budget and your likely scope of work. And we've not raised our fees with you folks, and in fact, we very rarely raise our fees once we get established with a client. Unless there's a big change in the scope of work, or there's a significant change in the economy that would force that, we like to give our clients the benefit of the bargain and keep them at the rates that are comfortable for them and within the scope of their work. So there are a number of factors that go into it, and we consider all of those. But I think that one of the main things that we look at is what does the city want? What can we do for them? And what's reasonable for a public entity to pay for those services.
I appreciate exactly what you said. If you'd said something different, then I would have doubted your integrity, because we are not the biggest city I'm sure you deal with. And the scope of projects and number of projects are probably not what other cities have as well too. But I know you pay the time and attention to us as well too. So I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Mayor, I'm just going to, again, provide perspective for the council. Nate, can I ask you a question? On a good year, what is the hoped for return from URS on an annual basis?
5 to 10%.
Okay. So if I take, again, $1,575,000 and divide that by 6 years worth of fees, let's say the 4 years plus 2 more years, that's gonna be 420% return.
Yeah, I'm not,
I'm just putting that in perspective. So, Robin, when you say I'm demanding, that's like beyond demanding. Like if we feel like URS has done a good job in getting a 10% return and Ferguson Group is getting beyond that, like I think it bears a little bit of, again, I gotta divide that by 6 years. So, okay, it's a 70% return. That's why I'm saying for the council's benefit, like, let's take a chill pill a little.
And I understand what you're saying, Spencer, but I have, my concerns are not with the Ferguson Group. My first concern is the primary race for a congressperson has not been concluded. And we don't know if Congressman Malloy is for earmarks. We don't know if her challenger is, and they have yet to work that race out. That's one. The second would be the election in November. There's going to be possible changes going on with Congress, with the president, and funding may not be there. We also know that the deficit that the nation is carrying is growing exponentially, and that these types of earmarks are going to decrease because we're going to be spending more on our interest payment for our debt that we're carrying as a nation. And so
I'm not a proponent, I'm not suggesting that my position is a position of endorsing federal spending. My position is if there is federal spending that is being spent, we want to be in the best position to secure it.
So what we're doing is we're giving our Congress people two answers. We're saying, go to Congress, and I would say that a lot of people in Centerville have a more conservative fiscal perspective on, and that's just from my opinion, that they would want their congressperson to go and try to get a balanced budget. We're beholden to get a balanced budget here in the city. That's not something they do at the national level, but we want them to. But here, we're asking them to do exactly the opposite, and we're going to get what we can get as long as if it's there, we got to get it. That's, to me, a problem in my brain, and I'm trying to put that, my personal feelings aside, and look at the city's, what the city needs, but still that concern is there with me.
well, I don't disagree with anything you just said, except for, like, I feel like when, I think that our Congress people can be smart enough to realize, hey, we don't really love earmarks, and we're not for that, but if you're gonna go out and, if we're gonna pay for them for people in every other state, then I'm saying, yes, we have to also chase that, because ultimately, it's our tax dollars paying for other states to have opportunities that we then don't get. I totally agree with you. Why are we sending a double-edged message? But I think we have to expect our Congress people to differentiate between that and recognize if it's going to happen anyway, we have to go out and compete that way. Or we're just paying for someone else's project, plus we're trying to save for our own project.
So,
It's kind of like the COVID money that they gave us.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't agree with that.
I didn't
But
either.
I'm not going to send our cities back, because that doesn't hurt anybody but my residents, and let every other city in Utah and in the nation keep their COVID money. If I could have voted, I would have voted totally against the COVID money. But if they're going to give it out, I didn't send mine personally back, and I didn't send the cities back for those same reasons, because me sending my back, if sending it back would have made everybody have to send theirs back, I would have done it in a minute, both personally and city. but it doesn't do that. So if everybody else is gonna get it, I'm not gonna go without.
Well said, Robin. Mike, did you want to say something?
Yeah, from a staff side, if I might just share my feelings a little bit. Number one, I don't like grants. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. But my feeling is the same as Councilman Hurst, is because the bottom line is our residents are paying for them. And I feel like if the city's going to anchor in and try to get the grants, my best tool is with the Ferguson group. I mean, I don't have the skills. Catherine has helped me through closing out the water meter grant, which we finally just got closed out. I don't know if I would have been able to do that one myself. You know, and she walked me through it, helped me out, you know. And kind of like what Mike was saying is, you know, how do I go after these grants? What can I do? And let's bring up the culvert one real quick for a second, because it's one that I think it shows what the Ferguson group is trying to do for us is, you know, we didn't get the grant, right? So his immediate response was, okay, let's see if we can find another avenue to go down. And it wasn't like, okay, we spent all this time for nothing. Let's find another spot and see if we can find it. Mike can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we found another avenue that we can possibly head down that road. And, you know, I don't have the time, and nor does Kevin, to steer that, to make that happen, I think. You know, I rely on their expertise. I will have to say, with the water meter grant, it was kind of interesting because I shared that we received the grant with somebody that writes the grants for water meters all the time. And I asked him, what's this piece of paper? And I showed him that, you know, we'd been awarded the grant. He goes, I don't know, I've never seen one before. I've always applied for them, but I've never got this far. And that's what I have. I mean, you can give me equipment, you can give me tools, whatever way you want me to go. If you don't want me to do grants, that's great. But I need the tools to do the job to get me to the point, you know. And, you know, and I'd encourage for you to sit in one meeting and just kind of listen to what goes on, because it's, to me, it's a half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour of intense, okay, how can we go this way, or there's this opportunity. And that's what I like about with the Ferguson group is, you know, do you guys think this is a fit? Is this an avenue we can plug into? And I appreciate that because, you know, I mean, yeah, I feel bad we didn't get the new well. I feel bad about all that stuff, mainly because we spent a lot of time to get to that point. The nice thing is the information's still generated, right? As soon as we find that, we can plug it in and play and hopefully go forward with it. But I mean, like for me, the wording that they would use when we did that first Water Smart grant, I'm just going, I don't know how she did all this stuff because I don't get, but it's her words and her buzzwords that help to get us the grant. But anyway, from a staff perspective, it's a tool in my toolbox. You know, what you guys decide, I get. You got to look after the best for each of the residents in town. You know, for me, all I'm trying to do is what you want me to do and the best of my abilities to move forward and do the job. And this is one of the tools I think helps me out. Yeah, to me, it's a lot of money. But, you know, hopefully we can score another. One thing that I have learned, and I think Mike would agree with me and the rest of them that's in there, is we need to make sure that the dollar amount that we're going for is bigger. You know, the $1.5 million was great, but I find the amount of time that we've spent on that, I wished it was a $2-3 million deal. I really do. Because it takes a lot of time. And I've told Kevin, I've told everybody, I says, just let me build the tank. You guys take care of the paperwork, I'll build the tank because it's a lot easier. And I still feel that way. When we get hit the rubber, you know, for the tank, it's going to be done, and then we're going to be, okay, now we've got to close this thing out. And, you know, with that, we would need the Ferguson group. So that's your 2 cents worth from the, you know, from my staff, from me, of how I feel about it.
Mayor,
Thanks,
I've been
Mike,
pretty
that helps.
quiet. Can I share my thoughts for what they're worth?
Yes, yeah, so share them, and then it's probably time to approve or disapprove the agreement, so thank you, go ahead.
I'll be brief. Since coming onto city council, I have heard nothing but positives about the Ferguson group from our staff. And I place a lot of stock in Brent's experience in working with them, not just here, but with his prior city. He's had a good experience with them. They've clearly gotten a good return on our investment. 1.575 million is nothing to scoff at. And I am certainly willing to agree to a 2-year contract to see what else they can do. I don't expect anybody to bat 100. Is that the right baseball analogy? Is 100 right? Like 100 is
1,000.
perfect?
1,000.
1,000, thank you. I don't expect, I knew I was saying that wrong.
You don't want to bat 100.
We got
I
you.
know that would be bad. Okay, so see, I'm not a baseball person. I don't expect anybody to bat 1,000, and I think that they've shown that they can do good work for us. And I think that it is definitely worth keeping them on and seeing what they can do for us for the next 2 years. I think that we've made abundantly clear to them that we're looking for them to help us out over the next 2 years, and I feel like they were probably already motivated, but if weren't, are now very motivated to help us out. So I'm definitely in favor of approving this renewing of the contract.
And part of my concern is just that not only that we keep Ferguson Group engaged, but we also have to have, I mean, staff has to continue, which, you know, Mike sent me the emails for quite a while, and I appreciated that. There is some work involved with going through the opportunities that they send out. And so you know, if we get to the point where the city's like, city staff's like, we can't keep up with this, we need to know that. But everything that you said, Mike, sounds good to me that this is, and I agree that it is a great rate of return at this point. I'm not necessarily suggesting we don't continue with it. I'm suggesting that we do need to see, it can't just be a break even. So yes, that's great that we got the $1.5 million. While Ferguson Group was heavily involved in that, I think it needs to be mentioned that our mayor was very, very involved and had the right connections.
That's right.
And so it wasn't entirely just what Ferguson Group did. It was a entire thing going on with staff and the mayor as well. And that's no diss on the Ferguson Group. I agree, they're going in and helping us with the buzzwords and the lingo and all of that, but also it's who our political leaders are. And so, you know, I mean, it's difficult. I appreciate Senator Lee and Senator Romney for their stand on earmarks, but, you know, also that's the one thing we did win that is making this worth it is an earmark, so.
But we haven't received the money yet.
But we will.
Because of the structure.
I'm not worried about that at this point. I've seen enough grant funding. It's just that they have to go through all the federal hoops. And frankly, it's maybe not worth it to the city to chase federal money because of the hoops. I mean, that may be a different discussion another day.
If I can answer.
But that's not the Ferguson Group.
I like all the comments that are being shared, but I will share that the tank had to be replaced, right? So we're $1.5 million we had to find, and we did not have the cash flow reserves to build it. So we would be bonding currently right now for $1.5 million. What would be our, what's that? Or more. Or more. So what would be our annual payment on that to increase? What would we have to increase our rates by to pay for that because we didn't get this funding? That's where we're at. We're not increasing our water rates anymore. We are, because we didn't have to pursue a bond to pay for this tank.
I calculated that at one time, Brant. I don't remember.
178,000. That's what I'm going to guess. I don't know. I don't know what it would be, but.
All right, everybody's chimed in. Do I have a motion on this matter?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement between Central City and Ferguson Group.
Second.
Motion is second. Let's roll call vote. Councilwoman Hayman?
Aye.
Aye.
Dang.
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 4-1. Don't leave yet, Ferguson Group. I was kind of quiet through the whole process because I didn't want to sway one way or the other, but first off, Congressman Stewart, initially when I was talking with him, I said, we're going to have a group call with you, and we're bringing in the Ferguson Group. I said, I don't want to damage my relationship with you. He says, you won't at all, Mayor, because the Ferguson Group is very professional, and I appreciate them. Same thing that Congresswoman Malloy said, who, you know, was one of the attorneys on his staff. Politics is a team game, and you have to double and triple team. I played enough basketball to know what double and triple teaming does, and you have to be constantly in contact. And I do what I can here, and I hope we all can as well too. But we're not, like Brent said, privy to the 400 or 500 pages that are coming out in something. But yeah, I try and establish relationships. And Colby Jenkins I have talked to. he has told me that I made him well aware of the tank and potential other things. He said he would continue to support us. We'll only see if he wins. But right now, she has a slim lead, and it looks like that may hold. But if not, I have contacted him and talked with him one-on-one on a couple of occasions. And but it's a team game. I can't keep up on it all, and none of us can either. And that's where you bring the professionals in, to double team and help out and work as a team. So I appreciate all they've done. So thank you. Thanks for joining us tonight. I wish I was back there. I know it's a background mic, but I've always wanted to be in D.C. on the 4th of July, even with all those people, to see all the festivities that take place. So if you're there, maybe you're getting out of town, and enjoy it. And same with you, Catherine, and you, Zach, as well. So thanks for being with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. We truly appreciate it, and we can't wait to continue our work with y'all. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we'll get an updated federal funding priorities list. Nate, will you help me get that? And we'll get that out to council.
And thank you, Brent. And I like what Gina says, and maybe Spence, maybe all of them, but the successes and the failures tell us, because I lobby for the CPAs, and we maybe have 10 successes, 10 failures every one success, if not greater, so it takes a lot of hard work to get one thing through.
Well, and for me, I think it would just help me to go, okay, they are working on all of these things. I don't expect them to win every single one. And the reason why is because exactly what we talked about. It depends on the political climate. It depends on what the mayor said, the relationships that we already have. I know that anytime our company looks at chasing a federal grant, we know it's thousands of dollars.
Well, I didn't answer this with Councilor Meekum, but size, I don't know if that matters as much as relationships, which have been shared multiple times. But in your case, if I can get a little personal, your husband serves on boards, which he has that opportunity to develop those relationships. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the mayor's relationships with the representatives is huge. Our conversations, Congresswoman Malloy meeting with me and wanting to meet with me meant a lot, even though I didn't want to bother her because I didn't schedule her, but I had some free time at National Police Week to do that. She invited me and wanted to meet with me because we have that relationship we've already established, and all that matters, and the Ferguson Group helps that. So the Ferguson Group, we'll hope to establish another meeting with Senator Curtis, possibly if he's elected, or whoever's elected. We'll be establishing a relationship once the election's over, meeting with them. In the past, I have gone to DC to meet with them in person, and meeting with the federal agencies where we're applying for money, which goes a long way, or this last time it was COVID, so we met via Zoom. And again, meeting with Senator Romney via Zoom was beneficial to help them say, here's who we are, and here's what our needs are, how can you help? So relationships matter more than size, I think. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks. Let's move on, although this is kind of politics. Fun, I could talk it forever. Okay. But Alan, come on up. Let's talk about tasers and this long contract we have in front of us. I looked at that over the weekend. That's a long puppy.
Yeah, I really tried getting through it, and
They deferred to Lisa.
I'll be honest, I did skim it. I hit the high points. But
Well, she'll help you as well too, because
I
attorneys
figure-
read everything.
That's right.
Just says they're not responsible for anything. They already told us that when they came.
Yeah, they did say that.
I'm surprised they gave us their address.
All right, so we bring to you today the Master Services and Purchasing Agreement for a customer, along with the Axon Customer Experience Improvement Program Appendix, and our purchase quote. So we're asking council today to approve signing of these contract. And just as a review, Axon is the owner of Taser brand, and we're looking at the Taser 10, which you guys saw the demonstration and actually got a shoot a couple months ago. We've had a lot of internal discussions on the need for the Taser 10 to make this upgrade, make this jump. We'll be jumping a couple different versions of the Taser. The one we're carrying right now is pretty archaic and old technology, so I think we've done a good job of waiting for the right technology to come along to now invest the money in new Tasers. And so we've worked with them to lower down the overall purchase price. And so now we're looking at about $17,800 a year for the next 5 years. So during our budget discussions, council had tentatively approved the purchase of the Tasers. So today we're just looking to make it official by signing the paperwork. Any questions?
No questions. I'm not excited about spending $88,000, but I am very excited to get into your hands equipment that will better protect your officers and the public. So I'm delighted to be able to get you updated Tasers.
I agree with that, and you know what, if it saves one of our officers even in injuries,
Yep.
$17,000 in a year isn't very much money, so I'm very happy to support the officers and want them to have that.
And I think the most recent case study is the mail truck incident, which luckily there was no personal harm, but there was property damage, which costs us money. So there's that consideration as a
Right.
secondary consideration.
Like I
to
said,
personal
I'm just
injury.
happy. If it makes my officers safer, I'm all for it.
Lisa, this contract is ridiculous, just for the record. I mean, and I say this as a lawyer.
So you agree with me?
on.
Well, and the one question, it says it automatically renews. Well, do we even want to say, or can we say unless we terminate
Unless we
prior
terminate?
to? It doesn't
Yes.
say that,
Holy
so
moly.
we
Yes,
can,
let's fix
add that. And then the other question I had is on this, the two things that they really wanted us to sign is the master services agreement and then the customer experience improvement program appendix. So I don't know that all of these appendices are applicable to us, but that customer experience one definitely is. And so my question is, they don't explain very well all of this information, but they have 2 tiers of data, customer data, that they would like us to allow them to use to improve their products. And there's a tier 1 and a tier 2. We can do the tier 1, but they need our written consent for tier 2. So I just want to know what I think from the police department standpoint, they don't care what is provided, or they're willing to provide everything that they would like, but from a council standpoint, policy standpoint, obviously we're getting more requirements from the state about data privacy, et cetera. So I can't even explain to you what's in tier 1 versus tier 2. Do you want us to click just box 1 or 1 and 2?
Do you want me to call former council member McEwen on the phone? He can answer this question.
Well, I guess that begs the question.
He's gonna say don't provide any of it, but anyway, it's just like,
exactly what
saying,
he's
hey,
saying.
can we make your product better?
We need to know some data to make your product better.
Yeah, so Lisa, my question is you have a recommendation here, but my guess is you're going to want flexibility or some leeway in that recommendation for you to be able to make changes that you are comfortable with from a city representation standpoint.
On this customer experience?
No.
Oh, there's just, do you want to participate or not? That's,
No, I'm not saying on that specifically. I'm saying contract generally. You're talking about the auto renew.
yeah.
Like, we're not
Well,
gonna.
that was the main point. I mean, usually I look at the termination clauses, but the reason we don't have to is they do have a non-appropriation clause, which is usually excluded from contracts, but they do have a non-appropriation, meaning if we don't
Meaning if
budget for it,
it's-
we don't have to stay in the contract, but they do have that, then we're gonna get bumped up, because we're getting all the equipment for less than MSRP, and so if we terminate because of non-appropriation, it appears to me that then we owe them for the price of the equipment that
MSRP price.
would have been. And we have no idea what that is. So anyway,
But what
that
is
would be
early
my only
termi-
thing is,
like
hey,
the-
we should be able to get out after 5 years with no,
That's my point. My point is if we move to approve this, you want some specific language in that motion Do you not?
I don't
To
think
give you that
so.
flexibility, or?
Sure, yeah, you could just say another, that I could try to negotiate, this termination clause and the payment, I think we should have the right to get out at 5 years, that's implied, but not clearly stated. It just says it's gonna automatically renew. And usually we say, comma, unless otherwise terminated 30 days prior to the end of the 5-year term. So I think we're willing to do the 5 years, and then what do we wanna do after that?
Right.
But then they have the improvement. So yeah, you could just say, subject to recommended changes to be negotiated by the city attorney. But then you need to make the policy decision on what kind of data do you want to share with them
Yes.
under this.
Can I chime in here? So the Axon Customer Experience Improvement Program Appendix is one a form I did read through. I read through that pretty carefully. And this is not something that's been pushed by Axon during the negotiations to go to this higher tier of sharing. They haven't asked us to. It's just the first I've heard about it is reading the documentation here. It does make sense to me that Axon would like to pull data and video and in the development of their equipment and software. I know Axon is, like all the other manufacturers of body cameras and police equipment, are really looking at AI and the integration of it. They're working on automatic transcription based on body cam. Motorola is also working on this, and so they actually have a program where an officer gets done with their call, and the body camera and the software kind of auto-generates a report based on the video and the audio from that interaction. And a lot of this technology they need data to do this technology, and so a lot of this data is generated from our interactions. Luckily, the actual tasers don't generate as much as the body cameras that Axon sells. So I do believe most of this experience improvement program is geared around their body cameras and not as much around the tasers. Because the tasers, they don't collect audio, they don't do video, they just, really all it collects is the ambient air temperature, the voltage, how long the trigger is pulled for, and the effectiveness of the deployment. There's not a lot of data there.
And helping data, sharing data to get a better product, I don't necessarily disagree with, but we're participating in their R&D, and we're not receiving really a great discount on the product. So I'm not quite sure. I'm in favor of sharing information, but anyway, that's.
So by default, we're included in tier 1 sharing, but we can opt out. And tier 2, you have to specifically check this box. So at a minimum, I probably wouldn't check box 2. So the question is whether you want to participate in tier 1.
But what you're saying they're collecting is air temperature, voltage,
Right.
how long the trigger's
These are the
pulled.
data points I'm aware of that the taser itself would.
So
collect.
that doesn't sound like, I didn't read that in that customer experience improvement program per se, but is that somewhere in the contract, Lisa?
Didn't read what?
What he just said is what's collected. That didn't seem clear to me.
No, exactly, it doesn't.
It's not clear on what, they gave examples of things that could be collected, but those examples are geared around body cameras.
Right.
Which we don't have.
So I guess I would say, can't we just ask them to clarify that for the tasers?
Or opt out, it's not applicable to our product that we're using. But yes,
Yeah.
if police department's okay sharing information, if it's
I'm
just
all right
that
opt
minimal
out.
information, it's not a huge
I said I'm all
concern.
right to opt out.
Right, I mean, there is some benefit to them having data from us, maybe effectiveness.
Okay with the data, I'm channeling my inner George McEwen and saying, I do want to make sure we're respectful of any video footage that does come from a body cam of the officer, of the individual maybe being tased, that we need to be
But
respectful.
they would not
of.
have access.
That's what I want to.
Yeah, no.
But they haven't necessarily clearly stated that.
Well, we're not on Axon platform for body cameras.
Okay.
Two different platforms, they don't talk to each other. Tasers just by itself, we use Motorola.
I'm just
for body
clarifying
cams, that
what
they
it
definitely,
is
they hate each other, they
you-
would never share.
I'm just clarifying what you know will be going to them, so I can understand it. Maybe that's what the difference is between tier 1 and tier 2, is that you voluntarily give them additional.
But I think Lisa's suggesting we don't even consider tier 2.
I agree with that. I'm just saying I think that they should put in writing what it is specifically that they want in tier 1. And that we should give Lisa the ability to feel comfortable with that.
Well, they define customer content, so this is what they're collecting, is data uploaded into, ingested by, or created in Axon cloud services within customer's tenant, including media or multimedia uploaded onto Axon cloud services by customer. Customer content include evidence but excludes non-content data.
Why would we give them anything more than we need to?
Yeah.
Would we give, because it's constantly changing, and in 5 years, it's going to be very difficult to just define what that is. As
Correct.
we
I mean,
move into the
if there's no
future,
definition to it, it's open-ended.
Right.
Right.
I think it's either you
And I
give
think they want it that way, right?
Correct,
They-
yeah, absolutely.
They don't know what they're gonna want a couple of years from now, so they just want everything.
Right.
I'm a less is more on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I.
Based on the amount of work we have to do to read the contract, we're
Yes.
gonna give you less.
Yes.
With regard to the contract, Lisa, 2 comments. With regard to termination, I would be inclined to say that it terminates after 5 years unless it is expressly renewed by the parties.
Okay.
Make it an affirmative,
Yeah, make it
I
an
like
affirmative
that to renew,
renewal.
I like
rather than
that.
having to provide notice. That's one less thing that we'll have to track
Yes.
to terminate the
I
agreement.
like that a lot.
I do too.
And the other thing, and this is just because I am me, I do not understand this non-discrimination provision. Why? I mean, we are not a federal agency, which is, I presume, why it's in their boilerplate, but I am not inclined to promise them that we won't discriminate against anybody based on any protected class. I have no idea why they would need that from us, and I would be inclined to strike it.
Do we need the Nate rule in here too?
No, it's not over 100,000.
Okay.
So, the boycotting.
That's right.
So, yes, there's other language in here if you are a federal agency, so I think this is just their federal.
it's their
I
plate,
did
it
see
just
other,
bothers
if you
me.
are, but.
Like, I mean, I don't see any
I'm sure there's federal
circumstance.
grants involved, that,
Yeah,
that
I'm sure,
language
but-
could probably, you know.
I mean, I guess you're saying we don't
Satisfied.
want to be contractually
Right.
bound because we do comply with discrimination
Of course we do, but I
clauses,
don't want to create a cause of
Okay.
action. Not that I
Okay.
think they would ever bring
See if
something, but
they,
it's
see if
just
they'll
weird.
take out 18.4.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at least they had governing law. We'll move on to the Cobblestone contract that wanted us to use New Jersey as our governing law. So at least this says the state where the customer is physically located, so.
I'm enjoying the 2 attorneys on staff available to help with. Paying for one,
I
getting
like
2,
it.
this is
Me
great.
too.
And Nate stepped out, but I want to verify with you, Brent, and let everybody know this was approved in the budget 2
Correct.
weeks ago.
Yes.
Correct? Yes. More questions for Alan or Lisa or Brent or anybody? Or are you good? Motion on it?
I'll make a motion that we approve the master services and purchasing agreement from Axon Enterprises Incorporated for Taser equipment and services for the police department. The annual payment will be in the amount of $17,799.20 and will be due in October of each year for the next 5 years. Lisa will add language that is appropriate as she feels in the contract to terminate the contract at the end of 5 years. Is there anything else, Lisa?
Non-discrimination.
And other appropriate
Yeah.
revisions. to the
And other appropriate revisions. Is that good?
I'll second that.
Motion is second. Let's vote, starting with Councilwoman Hurst.
Aye.
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 That passed unanimously. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Lisa. All right, as Lisa talked about, let's go to another contract for services. Lisa, you want to talk about this, or Jennifer, to you? I hear you're pretty excited about it.
Jennifer's excited.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Tell us about it, Jennifer.
The software, excited to talk about it.
Well, I think you're more excited to talk about it than the software, aren't you, or is it vice versa?
I mean, I'm probably more excited about the software than I am to talk about it. That's okay, I can talk about it. Yeah, so basically Cobblestone is a software, it's a agreement and contract tracking software. We enter into many agreements each year, probably around 100 or so agreements and contracts each year. And right now they're just kept in our archive database, Laserfish, where we can search them through that, but it's not a great index of our contracts. A lot of times we don't have a way of tracking when those agreements expire, rather than maybe just like putting it on our calendar, 10 years in the future or something, and sometimes they get missed, and we, sometimes contracts will pop up and we'll be like, oh, this has been expired for a while, it needs to be renewed. So basically we just need we're looking into different software options to help us track our agreements and contracts, and we have signed up for we're currently in a 30-day free trial with Cobblestone, and we've been testing it out, and we've been getting training on it, and it has been good. There's a lot of work that goes into setting it up, and it's very customizable. We can basically decide all of the data points that we want to track within a contract, but it's on us to set that up and to decide exactly what we're tracking in those agreements. So it's been good so far. They gave us several different options of their software, but we essentially just decided to go with their cheapest option, at least to start, and we can always expand on that later. But the contract that we attached for you in your packet is it's called their Insight Express option. And it shows the first year costs at being about $9,100, but this also includes almost $6,000 of optional training, which since we're doing our 30-day trial right now, we're getting a lot of training done right now for free. And so we're hoping that we can chop off a lot of this optional training and work sessions. We may not need this much. So if you cut out all this optional training, the cost really comes down to be about $3,100 for the first year. And then it may be, it's just trainings as needed, and we would pay for those extra if we needed them. And we wouldn't pay for these trainings when we sign up for the contract. It would just be the base rate, and then moving forward, if we needed those trainings, we'd reach.
Trainings are a la carte.
Exactly. So the first year base rate would be $31.68 minus all of those optional trainings, and then year two, $34.21, and they have put up to an 8% increase each year, right? Which
Yes.
was
So
frustrating.
that was the thing that jumped out at me is,
Right.
like, yeah, 8% is exorbitant. They're saying up to, so
Well, originally they said it was 5%, and they gave us the quote.
Yeah.
And we ran the numbers, and it was more than 5%. We couldn't figure out how to add it up, and they said, oh, well, no, we misspoke. It's not 5%, it's up to 8%, but it's not a straight 8%. It's just that would be the maximum, and every year we decide what it goes up to. And at that point, this was just last week when we found out it wasn't 5%, it might be up to 8%.
I guess the 5% cap was on the enterprise contract, which is the more expensive version. They have an up to 5% increase on that one, but we wanted to go with the cheaper version, and they said, oh, well, it's up to an 8% increase on the cheapest version, so.
So what type of flexibility do you think we have in negotiating that to be based more on either a fixed rate, or say it's like a collar of CPI or a COLA increase, not to exceed that, but 3% as a base?
I would guess not very much, but.
I'm guessing that too. I just don't know if there's been that conversation.
We did ask when
Yeah.
we highlighted that it was more than 5%, and then they acknowledged it was 8%. They gave us $600 off this first year, which will accommodate a few years. You'll see they decided not to charge us for the
That's 2 years worth
$566.
of, that's 2 years worth of increases.
So that's what they offered.
I think they gave us that discount because they communicated poorly on their increases, so.
So we got $600 off regular rate, which, yeah, pays for the increase.
But if you were a company and we'd already agreed up to 8%, wouldn't you take the 8%?
Yeah, that's what we
If
have
I'm a
to-
company and you've already signed the contract that I can up my rates
Yeah, you're gonna do
8% every
8%.
year, aren't you gonna take
Yeah,
8%?
exactly. That's my
I mean,
point.
that's a
Correct.
no given to me, is that they're gonna do the 8% every year.
And Jennifer, this is going to track 100 contracts?
It can track unlimited contracts. I was just saying, we enter into approximately 100 contracts per year, and so that's a lot of contracts for us to handle without a software.
Okay.
So that's why we're looking into this. But it's not limiting us to 100 per year. It's unlimited contracts. It's just about how much we would be putting into it.
You can go in and put in all the historical stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
How many total contracts, like as of right now, do we think that it's going to be managing historical and what we're doing this year?
3.2 million.
Well, like I said, starting off, it's a lot of work to get it up and running. So we'd probably just input probably our last couple years of contracts, and then slowly over time go back and as we can import our older historical contracts. But we really, for now, want our current contracts that we have active to be able to
Active
track
contracts.
those, the
Yeah,
active
and then,
contracts.
and I
too.
think we also want to make sure this is the company we're going with, because we're going to spend we've already spent a
Right.
lot of time, and then, setting this up, and the data points, like the data points for each contract is going to be different, and even the default fields are different, and so before we input 10 years of agreements, I think we should wait a year and make sure we like this, because,
Right.
yeah, if we switch, we should switch quickly and, try something else. But so far, we're really getting excited about this, and we are asking for, I think in the budget, there's already budget $10,000, so we're asking for the $9,138 because we may want to use that training because it's so robust. So for instance, we can even add some templates where it would generate contracts for us. So there's other things that we might want training for, but I think this year, we're just going to be happy if we just get our active contracts on here and the data points that we want, and then practice with that.
Is this standard software being used by cities all over?
No.
So Jennifer did ask, because as we've mentioned, there's a statute that says city recorders are required to keep an index of all contracts and, that the city's entered, and we keep those contracts as public records generally. And so she did reach out to the municipal recorders and said, hey, how are you guys tracking this? And it seems like most of them are doing, Excel sort of sheets and things like that. But
No, I reached out to all of the city recorders in South Davis and a few others, and not a single one had a software. It was either Excel or Outlook task lists. You know how like you can do your check marks on your email? And that's a lot of stuff to track on an Outlook task list, I thought.
Yeah, so here's the follow-up question. Let's say in a year we like it, but in 3 years or 4 years, we don't. Is
Right.
there an export function as part of this software where it's easy to transition to a new platform?
I
need to
think
make sure we
there,
own our
was my
data.
next
yeah, I think there was, I don't remember if it was the Taser or this one, I read a lot of contracts. I know one of them had a really good export,
I think it was this one.
Yeah, actually, I can't answer that because they have all kinds of reports that you can pull.
It was this one.
I don't know
So just make
exactly.
sure you own our data, is
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Correct. We own our data. We can export it before we say, see you later.
And
Right.
create an Excel spreadsheet, maybe based on that data.
Correct, which then you can,
More easily input?
yes, exactly. You're not going to miss anything in that transition.
So that's the
How
form
long
we
is
want to
this
make sure.
contract
And
for?
we're,
export
right,
that form.
and we're also,
we
with
want to
this software,
terminate it.
we're also
Terminate
not,
it anytime.
30 day.
30-day termination notice.
yeah. With this software, we're also not moving or taking any of our contracts or agreements out of Laserfish where they're currently stored. So we'll still have what we already have. It's just another way of tracking expiration dates and,
and what we like is
All
it's
kinds of
cloud-based
stuff.
though, too, so it's a separate data backup that you
Yeah.
can have access anywhere.
So I'll just speak to the escalation provision. I don't like it, but there is a 30-day out. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
there's,
renegotiate.
there's levers on either side. They may say, fine, go ahead, go to somebody else, but they may also say, no, we don't want you to leave.
Yeah.
So when they talk about not to exceed 8%, if they come back with 8%, we're like, we're out.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna probably come back. I don't like having to do that. I'd rather it be a fixed amount at a reasonable amount up front. So as much as you can lever that, I would say in a motion that we, as a council, suggest that we go back at a lower escalation rate if we can at all.
And maybe that will be the thing that they don't jump to the 8%, is they
Correct.
don't want us to quit.
That's my.
So I was thinking we were signing this for a year,
Yeah,
or
if
2
you're-
years,
if you're
or whatever, and
fixed
I'm
here for 5
thinking,
years,
we're
you're
gonna do this for 5 years, I'm gonna up you 8% every year, no matter what.
No, but we can
if
get out pretty much
I'm still
anytime.
going to have to deal with you guys, and you could drop me, then I maybe wouldn't go the
That's my
8%.
point.
So I agree with that. I'm okay with that.
Are there any extra bells and whistles on here that you guys think would be helpful that they didn't throw in? Because as a backup, what I'm thinking is, if they won't back off the 8%.
Yes, what's the other?
Then I would be
negotiating?
like, the city council is really concerned about this, which is true. Can you throw in something else that would be beneficial to us, that wouldn't cost them anything, but that would benefit you guys as an extra? Is there something else extra on here that you could, because I would be all in favor of trying to negotiate for something else, if you can.
Pretty much the only extra is, with this express system that we're signing up for, we only get 3 users, 3 accounts that get to log into it. So the extras that why we were considering the more expensive option was so that we could have access for our other department heads and other employees to be able to get on there. So an extra would be, hey, can we have another user
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't cost them
access
anything,
onto?
right? Like, that's where what I'm
That's
thinking.
$780 a year to
Yeah.
add any
Yeah.
department head.
Hey, but toss that one in and we can do it.
Good suggestion, Councilwoman Hayman.
I don't think they'd do it, but we
I
could
don't,
ask.
it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah.
You'll-
No,
you'll-
exactly.
You'll
What's the
never
worst
get
they
it
can
if
say?
you don't
I
ask.
was gonna say, worst they can do is say no.
If the other cities are running spreadsheets, have you asked them to share?
No, they're not.
Would they be willing to share their spreadsheet setup? The reason I'm asking is, about a year ago, the sewer district needed something, and Bountiful City produced a spreadsheet that did everything that the software did and saved thousands of dollars. So I guess I'm just curious, like, the Mayor Harris came in and said, I'll get you access to this spreadsheet, see if this will work instead. And so there are some amazing abilities with spreadsheets. I'm not saying that that's what we want to do, but I just wondered if you had looked at any of those before.
I haven't seen any of them, but I certainly can ask. I'm sure there are city recorders that would be happy to share their spreadsheets with me. I mean, there's nothing secret about agreements,
Yeah.
so.
Just, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but I do feel like we are continually looking at additional softwares, and I mean, collectively in the 2 years since I've been on city council, we have upped the budget for a lot of software. So I'm not picking on you and this
Sure.
software. I'm just wondering if this is anything. Databases, sometimes a spreadsheet can produce what you need. So. But I'm fine to go ahead and go. I just think, if we have that 30-day, I don't want to say I wouldn't approve it. I just think, can we look and see if there's anything out there, and then we have that option to cancel this if we need to.
So the reason we had to bring this to you today is because our 30-day trial is expiring, I think, in next weeks or something. And so we did, in order for us to roll all the work that we've already done, to be able to roll that into an active contract with Cobblestone, we did have to have this approved. But we can have it approved, but then also if we decide to change our minds last minute, we don't have to, I guess, continue with it, but, so.
So can we make a motion to that point, that if they decide it's not what they want, they don't need to take it?
You can make that, you wanna make it?
You have a 30-day out.
Export it as a
I say with the
I don't know.
TSV.
You need to make that.
I didn't see, I don't recall what the export file would be, and that's the concern, is just make sure what is the
Yeah.
export. To make sure it's
I'm sure
CSV and
there's
not some
various
proprietary.
options, but, yeah, I can look into that.
It's gone quiet. We got a motion from anybody?
I move that we approve contract management software agreement with Cobblestone Software for Inside Express contract management software with the information provided in staff report with discretion to legal counsel to try to negotiate for better terms of the contract.
Second.
Aye.
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 All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Let's go to summary action calendar. This is the approval of two new police department vehicles. If anybody has any questions, we have two of our officers here. We have the chief and lieutenant here.
I just hope we're gonna get rid of a few. We sure have a lot out there in the parking lot. Just saying.
We need them as backups because our office,
We are actually short a car, so one of them out there smashed up from the mail truck incident. It's actually been stripped out and just needs to have a brace hole, get in there and drive it to the TNT auction. But yeah, there's definitely a need to have, we have 4 reserve cars and we could probably use more. We're not gonna hold on to more, but there are some that get parked over there that aren't being used, being taken home by officers. So new officers that are being field trained, a lot of times they're not allowed to take their cars home with them, so they park them up top there when they're not working.
But so if we have 4 and we're buying 2 more, then are we gonna have 6 or are we gonna get rid of 2?
Yeah, so there's two more that will be going to auction. Every time we bring in a new car, we get rid of one.
Okay, that's what I was,
Yep, so we maintain 20 active vehicles and then 4 reserved, 2 marked, 2 unmarked.
okay, so when we get these 2 new vehicles, we'll get rid of 2 vehicles.
Yes.
Okay, I'll be watching. Out the front window.
she's marked them with chalk.
So we actually need the equipment out of the old ones. We remove the equipment that we can use and we move them over. So we cannot actually maintain any more vehicles than we already do without having to buy additional radios and radars and all that stuff, so.
So when we look at this, Alan, we have a base price of 47.1. You do, there is equipment at 23, but that's equipment that they're providing on the car and you bring over additional equipment from older cars. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct. So there's 2 different police radios we're bringing over, the radars, like a flashlight, and there's not a lot of equipment that translates over because when a car gets to be 5, 6, 7 years old, when you have a different model year, sometimes a couple different models away, the equipment doesn't translate over. And so a lot of that has to actually be scrapped.
How old is our oldest car right now?
Our oldest patrol car is a reserve car in the fleet, and it's a 2016. We do have an old unmarked Explorer that's a 2013. And that 13 is going to get replaced this coming budget year.
What is the oldest one being driven every day?
17.
Okay, thanks.
And those are the ones being replaced. And I think it has 110, 120,000 miles on it.
All right, thanks. You got a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the purchase of the 2 new police department vehicles in the total amount of $141,900.
I'll second that.
Motion is second. Further discussion? Let's start with Councilman Plummer and going to the right.
Aye.
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 Thanks, Alan. That motion passes unanimously. All right, let's go to the minutes. The minutes approval of June 13th, special city council minutes, and June 18th, city council minutes. Oh, June 13th was our interviews. I was going to say, what was that? Okay, so any approval, any changes to those minutes, I should say?
Can I make one change on the regular city council, page 4, lines 15 and 16? It starts with Councilmember Hirsch shared that she would like to see the city implement an inclining block rate structure, period, that's fine. The next sentence, and I'll send this to you, Jennifer, if it's approved. This type of structure will promote water conservation for those that must use culinary water for outdoor watering. When I read that sentence, I was confused. I was a little confused by it, and I think it was that I was like, did they mean everyone using outdoor water the way it was worded? I just think that makes it a little more clear, because I know, I went back and listened, and we were specifically talking about those that have to use outdoor watering. Is that okay? I'll email you that sentence right now.
That would be great, thanks.
Anybody else have changes? You want to make the motion, Councilwoman Hirsch, based on that change?
Sure. I will make a motion to approve the minutes for the special city council as well as the regular city council with the amended change that I suggested, which I will email to Jennifer.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, let's go to the council member report. Today it's Councilmember Hayman.
I'm going to start with the good, which is the
Bad and the ugly.
Whitaker Museum. So we have just completed, the museum has just completed, they hired an outside company called VR Wizards to video the museum inside and out so that you can have a virtual 360 tour. So that's going to be available online to not just people inside of Centerville, but for everywhere, which I think is really, really great. And I want to give a special shout out for Bryce because the museum was able to obtain a grant to pay for the upfront costs of doing that video. So it's going to be $160 a year to maintain it, but we were able to save $3,000 due to the good work of Bryce. So
That was not a grant.
it was not a grant. They told me it was a grant, Bryce. No?
We budgeted for that last year.
Oh, well,
It
then,
finally got spent.
then I was misinformed.
Sorry.
Yeah, we still love you anyway.
It was not a grant.
It was not,
I'm needing him to pick up on minutes here.
It was an expense.
It was an expense, got it. Well, all right, I was misinformed on that, but that's
Still a
okay.
great thing.
It's still a great thing. I mean, then we can share a museum with not just our community, but with communities outside of ours, so I thought that was really great.
Shaylin, just as a point, I ask for this regularly, but I don't see it. Just remind Lisa to give us regular updates on things that are going on there.
I'll make a note to do that.
I have it, it's mine.
You gonna come up?
Well, this is going.
I have it, I just don't send it on to you, sorry.
Okay.
But yeah, you just want a quarterly report or just
Yeah.
is that what you're looking for still?
Maybe just
Quarterly?
fold it into one of Brant's,
Yeah, that's great.
like, weekly updates every quarter.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that.
That'd be great. That would be a
So
good idea.
maybe Brand's appreciating that we brought this up.
It's like my performance review right here in front of everybody.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'll definitely include that in the weekly report more often, so.
Yep.
Great, fantastic.
Bryce, we appreciate your honesty. We went from being praised to grant to say, no, it's an expense.
Well, I just didn't
Correct,
want
and
you
then, no, I have that, I'll get it out. So thank you for the
well, I just
honesty.
didn't want
I
you-
I say that in jokingly but seriousness, so thank you.
Absolutely, I just didn't want to have to re-correct the minutes.
Bryce, it's seriously impressive. Thank you.
You're welcome. So,
And then just to highlight one thing that's going to be upcoming from the museum, on July 11th, there's going to be a flashback heritage living military timeline that starts at 6 p.m. to dark. And they're working with a lot of people. They're going to have a Mormon Battalion reenactment group. They're going to have Civil War cannon that they're going to be shooting off. So if you hear a big cannon noise, that's acceptable. I understand. We've already got that
Wait,
cleared.
I'm sorry, when is this and where?
July 11th.
Okay,
July 11th. They're going to be bringing in a lot of people, like a horse and a mule to show horseshoeing. They're trying to get a little Red Cross station set up for the kids so that they can get bandaged. There are going to be a lot of games for kids, like they can fish and pan for gold and hammer nail into logs, and they're going to be making rubber band guns. There's going to be somebody there spinning wool. There's going to be donuts, I mean.
It's really fun. I've gone to it in past years, and it's really fun, and the
What time
kids
is
love
it?
it.
So it starts at 6 and it will go until dark. So just highlighting that, I know we're all going to be having fun with our 4th of July festivities, but that's something fun to tack on the following week. And it sounds like it could be fun for both adults and for kids. So it's a good family event. If you guys hear of anybody, like, that's a good thing to promote. Bryce is coming up. What did I forget, Bryce?
I just wanted to see if you were going to say anything about the tea party.
Oh, the tea party was, you know what, I was not able to go to the tea party, but I heard that it was a smashing success. We had 125 people attend, so that was a full house, and from everything I heard, it went very, very well.
That was 60 more people than last year.
Yeah.
From what I heard, it generated quite a bit of revenue for the Whitaker.
I think that there were so many people from the discussions that we may actually, like, cut it back a little next year, just because there were the
was almost
space
too many?
issues. Yeah, it was almost too many people.
I don't want to cut it back. I want to keep it how it was. I think just expanding
Yeah,
location.
if you cut it back, then you
I think
risk
you're
it
gonna, not
imploding.
25 people won't be able to attend
Yeah.
if you cut it back. But I think we have some ideas internally to make that work better. We're gonna have an extended grassy area on that east side of the museum, on the back side. So there's some more grass there that will be growing in for next year. So I think there's some good potential.
And if you want to wear a cool hat, this would be the place to do it, right? If
Yes,
you ever
we
wanted
did
to
that.
wear one of those cool, like, English hats?
Yes.
Like the British royalty? Yes.
Like
that-
And don't forget your
Fascination-
gloves.
Fascinator?
I say actually Kentucky
Yes.
Derby.
Oh, or Kentucky Derby, yes.
Kentucky Derby. Brooklyn and I went last year and we did Kentucky Derby style-ish.
The first year I went, I learned all the fan etiquette, like what certain angles of fan across your face and to the side and all
It
that
all
kind of stuff
means
means
something.
So
Yes.
definitely fun entertainment. So.
And then one last thing to highlight, just at the July 6th community park during our community event, we're going to have a pop-up museum at the ballpark, and there's going to be a mountain man there, and there's going to be a woman spinning there, and if you are a history buff, there are going to be some copies of a Newsette, which was a paper that was printed to distribute to Centerville soldiers, I want to say during World War I. I think I got the war right. So anyway, some good things happening with Whitaker, so that's the good. Let me talk about the other side. So I found myself thinking last week, oh, there is not going to be much to update our city council about the mosquito abatement board because they're spraying for mosquitoes and life goes on. Last week, it was discovered that one of the employees of the mosquito abatement district had placed a recording device in the vent of the women's locker room. And that was discovered and it was removed and the employee was suspended and he has been fired. So that was a really unfortunate event. The Mosquito Abatement Board Executive Director has been working very closely with Kaysville Police Department. And I understand that individual has been arrested and there will be charges against him. The good news is it sounds like it was only one day. Like it was up and they found it the same day. So it wasn't like a.
Fortunate,
Yeah.
although
but-
not great that it was up for one day.
So it does appear that the Mosquito Abatement Board took very prompt action and appropriate action as soon as this was
What do they use the
found.
locker room for?
To change.
Change after spray.
After you're out spraying?
Yeah, I got a shower.
And they've got women that are out spraying. I assume that was a women's locker.
Yeah, it was a women's locker room. So a very unfortunate event, but swift action was taken. Kaysville Police became immediately involved, and so that was not mosquito-related per se, but board-related.
Was it a new employee?
I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah, we have a board meeting is it next week? The week after next week? At our next board meeting, I expect that we're going to get a lot more information. Yeah, this all just came down just last week.
Okay, I just wonder if they've been there 20 years, maybe it wasn't the first time.
I don't get the sense that it was a 20-year employee, but I'm guessing. I could be totally wrong. So there is the update for my boards.
Thank you, Jaden, appreciate it. All right, Mayor report.
Mayor, just real quick on trails, we have actually on July 11th, also a Trails Connection Summit between North Salt Lake, us, and Bountiful. I've talked about it before, but we'll have a couple staff members, 3 members of our Trails Committee, and depending on whether you want to go to Whitaker or that one, Mayor, or both, I guess you can come to the start of the one and the end of the other.
Or the mosquito abatement board meeting, which is
Yeah,
the
okay.
July 11th,
Oh,
and
wow.
that's going to be interesting.
Okay.
The sewer board also approved a rate increase, so bills when they go out in probably this month is when, it seems like they go out in July. It's every 6 months, so there will be a $30-ish increase per connection. So just so you're aware, we had quite a few people from the public come and comment, but not really about the rates. They commented about more the concern of size of household and that the rate is the same per household. The sewer district actually has looked into trying to bill based on actual usage, but it is really difficult with 5 different cities. We would have to work with, for example, Centerville City would have to provide their water use data in order for that to work because we don't meter sewer. So anyway, there were a few residents from Centerville that came to discuss that, but people seem to be fairly understanding, or at least acknowledge that some of these changes in the rates are due to the increased effluent requirements by the state and the EPA. So just so you're aware, if anyone asks.
Thank you. That was going to be my first question. How did that go? And how did Utopia, didn't they have a public hearing too?
Yes, they did, but I was not on it.
Okay.
Were you?
Yes.
You get a report on that, or?
Yes.
Okay, I'll let you do it in your report. Okay. All right, things that I participated in. So Wasatch Integrated Waste Management, after a 6 or 9 month process, the board approved 2 options, either the bundle program or the opt-out program for recycling. I think I shared with you, I'm trying to keep this simple, but I think I shared with you that they went late last year to a complete bundle program. There's a lot of outcry on that. And so we revised and we came out with either the bundle program or the opt-out program. It passed by a slim 10-8 margin with 1 abstention. So it doesn't change a lot what we'll do here, but I have shared with Brent just a summary of what it is, and he and I imagine we'll talk further with Wasatch Integrated Waste Management. But so that was one thing of the boards I serve on. Another one, I'm not on this board, but you're probably all aware of the Code Blue Act that came from the legislature. They're requiring us as a second-class county to have temporary facilities for when the temperature gets below 18. They went pedal to the metal, and we're looking at building a permanent facility. And then that was, the reins were pulled on that, and that was, there's 5 mayors on this board. I'm not one of the 5 mayors, and a county commissioner. And so then they went to some other options. They've looked at senior centers, and then they put out an email to all of us mayors and city managers of any places in your city that you may have. Now, the most recent thing I heard was Mayor Tran from Kaysville called me last week because I told her to keep me in the loop. And she went and met with the bill sponsor and said, no, really all you have to do is have a plan. So the latest I've heard is just so you submit them, it's supposed to be submitted by August, just a plan of what you would do on a cold blue night. Now last year they were doing some motel vouchers, but they don't have those vouchers available this year, so stay tuned. Like I said, I'm not on that task force, but my contact there is Mayor Tran and Mayor Harris, who they're both on it, that I call regularly to see what's going on there. Let's see. Oh, I appreciate our Parks Committee. I've gone with my wife and our 2 grandkids to movies in the park, the first 2, and appreciate Haley and all that she's doing there, and the Parks and Recreation Committee. The first week it was kind of fun as I got nudged by one of the Park and Recs Committee. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't watching the movie that close. And said, Mayor, the sprinklers are on. And down on the west side of the park. So I quickly called Bruce, and he answered, and he says, oh, yeah, those are going to rotate and wash you all. So he got those off. So that was kind of exciting the first night, but it was fixed the second night. But it's been fun going to those. And then let's see what else has happened. Remember all of our activities going on this week. They start tomorrow night with the entrepreneur. You got the parade on, and the run and the parade on the 4th. And then you got movies in the park and other games next door here on the Friday night the 5th. And then the activities going on the 6th. I would just tell you that if you know of any volunteers, they're continuing to look for volunteers for many of the events. I got a report today that I was following, and that they have her about halfway there, Mary James said, but they're still looking for more volunteers. So I started panicking over the weekend, but I know that people in the community are getting the word out. So we can always need more volunteers there. And I'm looking forward to the events. They'll be a lot of fun and a good opportunity to celebrate our independence. Okay, two more things. Made a formal offer to Lieutenant Alan Ackerson to be police chief, and he accepted. So hopefully he's still strong on that too, because don't want to go back through the process again. So, so thank you for doing that. And then my last thing is I want to remind us all of July 12th between 2 and 6 o'clock, Chief Child retirement with a program at 2:30. So, but an open house during that whole time. So. Please remember that. And as a part of that, I'm going to defer part of my time, only if he wants. I hear this is his last council meeting, Chief, so if there's anything you want to say, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll just roast you. No, we'll come and celebrate with you on that Friday. So looks like he's coming up. I kind of twisted his arm. I didn't prepare him in advance. So.
Well, Mayor, thank you. I guess I can't turn down an invite like that. Yeah, so in 2002, I was made a lieutenant, and ever since then, I've been working with various council members and mayors quite regularly. Before that, I was a sergeant and didn't interact much with councils. A little bit, but not much. But for the last 22 years, I've been involved with all the mayors, all the council members, and obviously members of the community. And it's just been an absolute pleasure. We have enjoyed so much support through the years as a police department from just a whole host of local leaders from the council and the mayor and city manager. And I see Steve showed up here, who was there when I became chief, so I appreciate him. But I'm sure I'll have more to say during my roasting period on the 12th, but I just want to say that it's been a complete honor for me to serve here. This is definitely a highlight of my entire life to have this opportunity. It's hard for me to believe that I've had this great honor and opportunity to serve in this capacity. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. And thank you tonight for leading the Pledge of Allegiance.
Very welcome.
As you could tell, it was very moving for me. Thank you. All right, that's my report, unless there's questions for me. Brett?
All right, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple items. I did want to follow up, and it's been an honor to serve with Chief Child. He's by far one of the most, in the short 5 years I've been here, most influential person I've worked with in terms of just employees. He's been an incredible person. Loved working with him, and he's going to be dearly missed. I'm excited to work with Chief-select Ackerson. I'll look forward to that, but I'm definitely going to miss Chief Child. But he has a place for my travel trailer next to his home in Canal. That's what I'm going to drive the 6, 7, 8 hours down there. Anyway, he'll be missed. The two items I do have, Mr. Mayor, is one, follow-up from the UIA Utopia public hearing. The rate increase of $4 per month was approved, but I do want to clarify, that's not necessarily to the end user. It's a $4 increase to the ISPs. Now, whether or not the ISPs transfer that $4 to the end user, that's up to them, but the Utopia is raising the fees to the internet service providers. So, and they haven't heard, Utopia clarified, they haven't heard if they'll pass that on from any of them, but that may happen. But that's we're not being charged the end user with that fee yet. And then second, Bryce and I would like to try to coordinate a JIBE follow-up meeting. They said they can be prepared in 3 weeks. So is there any way I know this is holiday season, and so this might be tough. And we've got so many things to talk about, so I don't want to necessarily bog down our work sessions because I have so many items that we need to talk about in work sessions, so.
3 weeks would be the day before Pioneer Day? I'm out of town that day.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to be out of town, so we can wait till August 6th. We have a 5th Tuesday this month.
I'm available July 30th.
I'm available.
Because there's 5 Tuesdays in July.
Correct. So we have an IRMA conference down in Bryce Canyon that we have to commute that night. Bryce, maybe Lisa, and myself. Earlier? I mean, if there was a possibility of meeting earlier in the day, that gives us time to commute down.
On the 30th? Is that what we're talking about? That would work for me.
You do that?
Can we meet, how early could we meet?
As early as you tell me.
Oh, I'm not sure what to do with all this power.
4:30 a.m.
Let's do it. We'll have an omelet station. Be ready to
Brad
go.
won't even have him fall asleep.
Yep, I'll be awake.
Shaylin probably will be up.
I'll stay up.
Exactly.
That's very true, I will be up.
Could we, go ahead.
Does that work?
Yep, thank you.
You said something like about 4 p.m. Is that what I heard?
Well, I just wondered, because I know some of you have jobs, so I didn't know if maybe like before you were to go into work, that kind of meeting, like an 8 in the morning type of thing, as opposed to later in the day.
There's no creative juices flowing at 8 in the morning.
I don't know what you're talking about. Get up, come to Orange Theory with me, and then we can just meet up
Oh,
afterwards.
I would
It's gonna
love
be
to
great.
see that.
That would be pretty awesome.
I'd take a video for that. I just was thinking for people that have jobs like Brian and Jaylen and, well, everyone.
Not really.
Thanks, Bryce.
Not really.
Lack of flexibility in there?
Do we not all have jobs?
I resemble that one.
Glad one of us works up there.
Brian, it sounds like you're the only one that works.
You're doing great.
3 for 3.
I would be perfectly fine with this meeting. Like, that's fine.
I can make
me
myself,
when, Bryce.
I work that day, but I can make myself available at any time.
Councilmember Summer might be on his bike, on his
That's-
trainer while he's doing the meeting, but he's good
From
to
my
go.
perspective, that's actually better, Bryce, because if I can get up and come to this meeting and then go to work, rather than having to try to leave work early at like 2 in the afternoon, that's better for me. So I would be supportive of a breakfast meeting.
Councilwoman Hurst.
I'm available. I am not available from 1:10 to 2 o'clock that day, but other than that,
So,
I
but in the
can,
morning
I
you're
can move
available.
my schedule around.
So is 9?
I'll bring donuts.
Would 9 work?
Yeah.
Even with my job.
Your job?
Yeah, even though that I don't
Here we'll
work.
call Commissioner and just,
I can't wait to use this one again.
Yeah, other than Brian, the rest of us just have to schedule golf someplace.
Thanks, Bryce. I appreciate that. I needed a little bit of that at the end of this. Thank you.
raising kids, that's not a problem.
For comment
This is
relief?
why Brian voted nay against the Ferguson, because they're the only one who works.
Well, Brant's where I'm coming from.
Well, I'll reach out to them and.
All right, 9 o'clock on the 30th.
That would be super helpful for us that are traveling south, so I appreciate that. Thank you for accommodating.
Bryce, aren't you glad you came tonight?
Always glad to be. Never a dull moment.
Okay, thanks, Bryce. Brett, back to your.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's all I have. I can't follow up with that. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Please tell me we don't want to go.
No, we don't. So, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. This is council adjourned. Thank you, everyone.